Chapter 1645. Shenfang Changyang Su had basically turned into a completely new person when he emerged from Jian Chen's residence. It was not the first time he had seen his uncle, but it was the first time he had spoken to him from such a proximity. He had only seen his uncle from afar in the past, so he did not feel any mental pressure. However, he finally understood just how terrifying his uncle was when he saw him from such a close range. Even when his uncle purposefully concealed his presence, he was still filled with fear toward his uncle. He did not mention a single word about asking for violet cloud peaches, despite planning to beforehand. It was not because of his uncle's strictness or brutality. Instead, Changyang Su simply lacked the courage. Jian Chen's words echoed through Changyang Su's head after leaving the residence. He seemed rather absent-minded as he made his way through the clan without any intentions of going anywhere. When he raised his head again, he discovered that he had arrived home unknowingly. "Su'er, have you obtained violet cloud peaches from your uncle? I've heard that he's not a stingy person. He has given away so many of them to an outsider before, so as his nephew, you'll still be able to get a couple of those immortal peaches no matter what. Tell me, just how many did he give you?" Changyang Su's mother waited anxiously at home. As soon as Changyang Su returned, she asked urgently. Changyang Su remained rather dazed. He sat down on a seat absent-minded and only shook his head gently. He said nothing. "Su'er, your uncle didn't give you any violet cloud peaches at all?" The eyes of Changyang Su's mother widened. Disbelief was plastered across her face before displeasure quickly replaced it. "How can your uncle do that? He has given the young island master of 3 Saint Island so many, yet he treats his own nephew like this. He's your father's brother after all." "No, I have to go find your grandfather. Your uncle completely treats you as an outsider, no, even worse than an outsider." Changyang Su's mother became furious and immediately went to find Changyang Ba to complain. Changyang Su immediately stopped her and said, "Mother, don't go looking for grandfather. You can't blame uncle. Uncle's abilities are so great that there's nothing in the world that can hide from him. He'll know." Changyang Su's face became filled with uncontainable fear when he mentioned his uncle. Xia Yan stared at Changyang Su strangely. She completely understood her son, but she had never expected him to seemingly change so much after seeing his uncle. He seemed to fear his uncle very much. Uncle is right. There are no experts who are raised from the comfort of their home. Mother, I've made up my mind. I'll leave the clan tomorrow morning to go on a journey. I won't bring anyone with me this time." The next morning, Changyang Su left the clan. He went out alone. Only he himself understood that his entire temperament seemed to have changed after listening to his uncle's words. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes in his residence. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space and all the buildings, allowing him to see Changyang Su, who had already left the clan. He nodded in satisfaction. After a moment of silence, Jian Chen left his residence and headed to the Forbidden Grounds, the place where Changyang Ba cultivated. "Father, in this box is the violet cloud peach and the comprehension tea leaf that I've prepared for Su'er. Once he returns from his journey, please give him this box if he has truly changed. Otherwise, please hold on to it forever. Although Su'er's my brother's son, I can't support and raise a wastrel." Jian Chen passed a box containing the 2 heavenly resources to Changyang Ba and said sternly. Changyang Ba accepted the box and sighed gently. "We, the seniors, have an unshiftable blame for Su'er becoming like this. Xiang'er, don't worry. I know what to do." Jian Chen nodded. He conversed with his father some more before leaving. On this day, Jian Chen left the Changyang clan and arrived at the center of the city, the busiest location. There was quite a large inn there. The inn might not have been very famous on the continent, but in Lore City and the Jessen Kingdom, it possessed quite an extraordinary status. This was because the Changyang clan had always protected this inn since establishment. The owner of the inn had close ties with the most authoritative figures of the Changyang clan as well, Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. Not only had she been invited to the Changyang clan as a guest, Changyangba, and Bayuntian would even lower themselves to visit her at the start of every year with gifts. It was also because of this connection with the Changyang clan that this inn became a place that could not be provoked within Lore City. Even the wastrel scions of hermit or ancient clans had to dismiss their haughtiness and act obediently here, unwilling to cause trouble. Whenever someone made trouble in the inn or began fighting, the guards of the Changyang clan would chase them out. As time went on, many people understood that offending the inn was the same as directly offending the Changyang clan. Lore City developed rapidly, leading to the addition of many luxurious inns. This inn was not the largest, nor the most luxurious inn in Lore City, but it was the city's most popular inn because all the representatives of the various organizations who came to visit the Changyang clan would choose to stay in this inn. On this day, the inn welcomed a young man who carried 2 swords on his back. As soon as the young man entered the inn, a waiter jogged over and apologized. "Sir, may I ask if you are dining or staying?" "If you plan on staying, I must apologize, as all our rooms are." Suddenly, the waiter's voice came to a halt. His eyes widened at Jian Chen as disbelief flooded his face. Why, your sovereign Jian Chen," the waiter cried out in shock. At that moment, he completely doubted his eyes. He had actually seen the legendary sovereign Jian Chen in person. He was not unfamiliar with Jian Chen's appearance because he had seen his statue countless times. However, this was the first time he had actually seen him in person. There were quite a few people dining on the first floor of the inn. Many people heard the waiter's shocked cries, so the entire inn fell silent. Quite a few people became stunned. But very soon, everyone returned to their senses. They all stood up and bowed towards Jian Chen. Their faces were filled with excitement, respect, and admiration. "Fourth young master." At this moment, a familiar but old voice rang out. An old woman with a head full of gray hair made her way down the stairs with the support of 2 female servants. Joy filled her face. "Madam." Jian Chen ran over. His heart throbbed when he saw the old face. This old woman was Kendall's wife, Shenfang. Chapter 1646. Rui Jin emerges. Since the average lifespan of ordinary people on the Tianyuan continent was 200 years, Shenfang should not look so old, but Kendall's death took a very heavy toll on her mind. Time could not erode Shenfang's love for Kendall, so even after several dozen years, she still failed to get over her sorrow. This was why she had become an old woman despite only being middle-aged before. "Madam, you have to look after yourself. You can't forget that you have sons. Even if you don't care about yourself anymore, you have to care about your son." Jian Chen ran up to support Shenfang, who even struggled to walk. He felt rather pained inside. He could already sense that there was not much life force left in Shenfang. She did not have much time left. With his current strength, he could help her easily. He could effortlessly give her another 1,000 years of lifespan. However, she had already died inside, so if he gave her more life force selfishly, it would not help her. Instead, it would be a painful torture. That was exactly why Jian Chen did not take the action he wished to take. He did not wish for Shenfang to leave, but he did not wish for her to live in pain either. "Thank you, young master. You've done plenty for my family already. It's San's father's fortune to be able to meet you." "Young master, there are a lot of people here, so let's go up and talk," smiled Shenfang. She spoke rather weakly, seemingly running out of vigor. Shenfang disappeared from the first floor under Jian Chen's support, leaving all the diners stunned. Disbelief flooded their faces. "Oh my god, just who is the owner of the inn? Sovereign Jian Chen is actually supporting her personally." A while later, an uproar erupted on the first floor. Everyone had become utterly shocked as if they had just seen the most unbelievable thing in the world. 4 hours later, Jian Chen left the inn. He felt rather depressed. He tried to persuade Shenfang during their conversation. He hoped that she could get her to overcome her sorrow. Only like that could he assist her. Letting her live for several thousand more years would not pose a problem if she agreed. Unfortunately, Shenfang never let go of Kendall and refused Jian Chen's assistance. In her words, Kendall was very lonely in heaven. He needed someone to accompany him, and she would be that person. Shenfang's words left Jian Chen helpless. It was still useless even when he mentioned Sans. At this moment, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he raised his head towards the distant sky and shot off as a streak of violet light. He vanished into the horizon in a split second, having reached unbelievable speeds. The space near the mountain range located in the depths of Dragon Island suddenly started to distort. A huge golden gate rapidly formed in the distortions of space. There was an independent miniature world within the gate. Huge gravestones filled the entire world, and transparent dragon souls drifted around. They would roar from time to time, and their roars echoed across the entire island. This was the dragon's necropolis. The remains of many dragons were buried here, including Class 9 dragons. At this moment, a golden figure flew out from the depths of the necropolis. He radiated with a powerful draconic aura. All the weaker dragon souls collapsed as they trembled when they sensed the aura. The golden figure did not stop as he flew, directly flying out of the necropolis. The space gate to the necropolis slowly closed after he exited, and Dragon Island recovered its previous peace. The golden figure slowly dispersed his presence, and the golden light around him gradually vanished as well, revealing a handsome, middle-aged man in golden dragon robes. We've finally emerged. It has been several decades. I wonder how Jian Chen is right now. Suddenly, a female's voice rang out. A beauty who seemed to be in her 20s walked out from behind the middle-aged man. She wore fire-red feathers. A black-robed old man emerged after the woman. The three of them stood together, and every single one of them radiated with powerful presences. The middle-aged man was the strongest among them, having already reached the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Emperor. The woman was just slightly weaker, having reached the 8th heavenly layer of Saint Emperor. The old man was the weakest among the three of them, but he was also a Saint Emperor, except he was only at the 6th heavenly layer. The three of them were Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu. They had remained in secluded cultivation on Dragon Island for many years. Suddenly, there was a flash of violet light. Before they could even react, the streak of violet light had landed before them with unbelievable speed and a young man was revealed. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu narrowed their eyes, and they became shocked. The three of them had already become Saint Emperors, and one of them was even at the 9th heavenly layer, only an inch away from the origin realm. However, they had still failed to react before the streak of light, which completely astounded them. But in the next moment, they became even more shocked and they saw the figure that emerged from the violet light. Disbelief was plastered across their faces. Jian Chen. The three of them cried out. When they connected him with the streak of violet light earlier, they could no longer remain composed. They had never thought that Jian Chen's strength would actually progress at such a terrifying rate after several decades of not seeing him. The streak of violet light was so fast that it had completely exceeded the Saint Emperor of the Peng clan, the person who was once known to be the fastest in the world. Jian Chen obviously became overjoyed when he saw his three old acquaintances. He immediately clasped his hands and said, "Congratulations on emerging, seniors. Jian Chen, you sure have come quickly. Oh right, what level of cultivation have you reached now?" "I can't tell at all. I can't even sense your presence." Hong Lian stared at Jian Chen in surprise. "I can't tell your strength or sense any of your presence either. I wouldn't even know that you were standing before me if I closed my eyes. There are only two possibilities for that. First, you used a secret technique to hide yourself. The other possibility is that you've already surpassed the three of us in strength," Rui Jin said as he stared at Jian Chen. Shock gradually appeared on his face because he had already determined that the latter was extremely likely. Only that could explain why Jian Chen could move so quickly that they could not even react. "We're all Saint Emperors, so if it's the second scenario, wouldn't that mean that you've already reached the origin realm, Jian Chen?" That's impossible. It has only been a few short decades, He Yu said in shock. Chapter 1647, Prior to the Negotiations. 1. Jian Shen, have you really surpassed Saint Emperor and reached the origin realm in the past few decades? Rui Jin asked in shock. He stared at Jian Shen closely, waiting for his answer. Hong Lian and He Yu were fixated on Jian Shen as well. This question also weighed on their minds. They had no idea just how the outside world had changed during the decades they spent in secluded cultivation. According to their understanding, there were less than a handful of origin realm experts even with the 4 races combined. If Jian Shen was one of them now, it would just be too shocking. Jian Shen chuckled, "Seniors, many major matters have happened on the Tianyuan continent during the years you spent in seclusion. My personal strength has skyrocketed due to a few fortuitous encounters, so I should have already surpassed the origin realm now." What? Surpassed the origin realm? This time, the 3 of them collectively cried out. Their eyes widened and bulged as they were completely drowned in disbelief. Their hearts began to surge. Surpassed the origin realm? How is this possible? It has only been so long, the 3 of them murmured. They had become rather dazed. If it were not for the fact that they knew that Jian Shen was not someone who liked to joke around, they would directly believe that Jian Shen was kidding. According to their understanding, origin realm experts were unimaginably powerful. As for surpassing the origin realm, such a matter had completely exceeded their understanding. Seniors, why don't you go rest in the Changyang clan first? It'll be convenient for me to slowly tell you what has happened on the Tianyuan continent as well, said Jian Shen, inviting the 3 of them to his home politely. Rui Jin sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He said, "Fair enough, we'll go to the Changyang clan first then." Jian Shen brought Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu back to the Changyang clan in Lore City. As soon as they entered the clan, the 3 of them were secretly surprised as they could clearly sense all the Saint Emperors in the Changyang clan. There were so many of them even though several decades ago, they did not even have that many Saint Kings, let alone Saint Emperors. Looks like the world really has changed drastically in the years we've spent in seclusion. The overall strength of the world has been raised to a whole new level, the 3 of them sighed emotionally. Originally, they thought that their strength after they emerged could allow them to be ranked amongst the apex, even if they could not become invincible. However, looking at it now, they just found the thought to be hilariously naive. Jian Shen and the 3 others sat together in Jian Shen's majestic residence. Then Jian Shen began to explain everything that had happened across the years to them in detail. A few hours later, the 3 of them learnt about all the changes to the world in the time they were missing. It filled them with amazement. I never thought that the world would have changed so drastically in the decades we spent cultivating. Even so many origin realm experts have appeared. The current age is so glorious that even the ancient times cannot rival it, Rui Jin sighed emotionally. The current age belongs to origin realm experts. Saint Emperors are no longer anything now. Since the crisis of the world has been averted, the laws of the world are approaching perfection, and origin energy is slowly reappearing. Obviously, I can't let such a great chance slide through our fingers. As a result, I plan on continuing my cultivation and reach the origin realm as soon as possible, Hong Lian said sternly. With our current strength, we can no longer provide Jian Shen with any assistance. I want to keep cultivating as well and break through to the origin realm as soon as possible, Rui Jin also said. He Yu glanced past the 2 of them and chuckled, looks like the 2 of you have been quite motivated. You want to go back into seclusion right after emerging. Oh well, since you plan on cultivating some more, I'll go with you as well. Otherwise, our difference in strength will only become greater and greater. Under Jian Shen's arrangements, the 3 of them remained at the Changyang clan to cultivate. Origin realm experts had made a few arrangements in Changyang clan long ago. The energy of the world was extremely abundant there, more than a dozen times more abundant than the protector clans, which earned it the name of the greatest cultivation location in the world. Some origin energy had even gathered there, so the effects of cultivating there were far greater than remaining in the necropolis. After all, the necropolis did not have any origin energy. The three of them entered secluded cultivation and Jian Chen left the Changyang clan as well. As his two wives, Huang Wan and Yu Yu, were still in secluded cultivation, he had not seen the two of them when he returned this time. Jian Chen visited Flame City afterwards. The Flame Mercenaries had already developed to a point where it had several million internal members and several tens of million external members. They had become a superpower that had branches littered across the continent, even extending into the Sea Realm, Wasteland Continent, and Beast God Continent. As the four races became united and abandoned their old territorial mindset, the Flame Mercenaries were no longer composed of just humans. There were members of the 100 races, Sea Race, and magical beasts as well. The Flame Mercenaries remained under Bai Lian's control. As she spent just too much time managing the mercenaries, her strength had not progressed much at all. Even after consuming a violet cloud peach and large quantities of other precious heavenly resources, she remained as a Saint King. Meanwhile, De Gufeng, Xiao Tianyu, Wang Yifeng, Yun Zhen, Signorin, and so on had all reached Saint Emperor. De Gufeng and Xiao Tianyu improved at particularly astonishing rates with their impressive talents, having reached the 4th and 5th heavenly layers after consuming heavenly resources. Apart from that, Jetta Tai, who had originally joined him under his threats, had reached the 9th heavenly layer of Saint King as well. In all those years, he spent all his time in Flame City apart from returning to his clan from time to time. His mindset slowly changed as well as Jian Chen's strength gradually increased. He had been forced to follow Jian Chen originally, so he still felt rather reluctant before. However, not only did he treat himself as a part of the Flame Mercenaries now, he even took pride in it. Jian Chen's great-grandfather Bai Hai also remained in Flame City during all these years. He had basically become Bai Lian's supervisor for cultivation. All the members of the upper echelon would always see Bai Hai urge Bai Lian to cultivate more patiently. 3 days later, Jian Chen left Flame City. When he reappeared, he was already standing on 3 Saint Island. As soon as he set foot on 3 Saint Island, Shengguan Mu'er appeared before him silently. She stared at him for a while and said, "Jian Chen, I know that something has gone wrong during your secluded cultivation before. Tell me. I want to see if I can help." Jian Chen was stunned before smiling bitterly. "Looks like I really can't hide it from you. However, this problem is rather difficult to deal with." Jian Chen told her about the hidden problem that had appeared when he broke through to the 9th layer of the chaotic body. Chapter 1648, Prior to the Negotiations, 2, Shengguan Mu'er frowned after learning about Jian Chen's latent problem. She became worried. "This is very severe. We have to deal with it as soon as possible. If you suddenly lose control in this world, it'll be just like facing the crisis of the world again. If we can't stop it, the entire world will face destruction." Jian Chen also became rather stern. He had already thought of the consequences, but he could do nothing about it. "I plan on settling the matters in this world as soon as possible before moving on to the Saints' world. If I remain here with my current strength, I won't progress at all. Only the Saints' world can provide me with what I need for my chaotic body to grow. I believe that I'll be able to eliminate the problem with my soul once I grow stronger," Jian Chen said with a heavy heart. He was actually thinking of something else as well, which was going to the Immortals' world. This was because the twin swords originated from the Immortals' world. They were the sect treasures of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens, the chief sect of the 9 great sects of the Immortals' world. During the intense battle in the past, the Immortals' world had suffered heavy casualties. Their so-called greatest expert, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, had died, while the old master of the twin swords passed away after suffering the intense backlash caused by the fusion of the 2 swords. At the same time, the twin swords that were known to be one of the 10 great god artifacts in the Immortals' world shattered, leading to their sword spirits to fall to a lower world and them accepting him as their master. Jian Chen knew extremely well that the help he had received from the twin swords was the reason for his current achievements. Although the sword spirits rarely brought up the matters of the past during the days Jian Chen spent with them, he knew extremely well that the sword spirits wanted to return to the Immortals' world very much. At the same time, they still had attachments to their old master because it was he who had forged them. He was like their father. Aside from that, both the azulate swords Lao Jianchen had cultivated in the past and his current chaotic body originated from the sword sect of Violet Heavens. From a certain aspect, he had become a disciple of the sect, so it was extremely important for him to go to the Immortals' world. The Saints' world was the path to the Immortals' world. If he wanted to go to the Immortals' world, he had to go through the Saints' world, as there was no direct path to the Immortals' world from the Tianyuan continent. The sword spirits had also become completely lost exactly because they had taken his soul to the Tianyuan continent in the past. Shangguan Mu'er fell silent when she heard Jian Chen's words. She only responded after quite a while, "Your problem lies in the soul. Why don't you let me try and see if my music can help you?" After a moment of deliberation, Jian Chen agreed. Afterwards, Shangguan Mu'er attempted to influence Jian Chen's soul with her music, but there were no effects at all even after many attempts. Her music had basically become useless before Jian Chen, unable to influence his soul at all. The only thing she could manage to do was to calm him down through music. As she played, Jian Chen watched Shangguan Mu'er on with quite some interest. When she stopped, he asked, "Mu'er, your zither has a total of 36 strings, but why do I only ever see you use the first half? You never touch the latter half." Shangguan Mu'er looked at her zither and said, "The zither of the demonic cry has 36 strings, and there's a requirement for corresponding strength to play each one. My current strength is nowhere near enough to play all of its strings." A sliver of surprise appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He could not help but examine the zither carefully. This zither is actually so profound, where you even need the corresponding strength to play each string. You're at mid-reciprocity, yet you can only play a portion of the strings. Looks like this zither has quite an extraordinary origin. The zither of the demonic cry really does have quite an extraordinary origin. Many people on the Tianyuan continent believe that I condensed this zither from Saint Force, but that's not the case because I found it outside when I was young, the heavenly enchantress said calmly. "You found it?" Jian Chen became stunned as his expression turned strange. "That's right, I found the zither of the demonic cry. I just never told anyone about this. You're the first." Shangguan Mu'er stared deeply at Jian Chen and continued, "When I found this zither, it was buried in soil. I had only discovered it because a tiny corner of it was revealed. I had uncovered it with tremendous effort, and it was so heavy that I could not even budge it with my power from before. Then I accidentally cut my hand on the strings. When a droplet of my blood fell on it, I discovered that I had actually formed a slight connection with the zither. It was also through this connection that I learnt the zither's name. I also gained a cultivation method in my head. I used that cultivation method to make my way to where I am today." "I see. Looks like this zither is a pretty good treasure. The original owner probably died, which is why it ended up here through an accident." Jian Chen understood. He had already seen something like this before. The Inata Tower had also ended up in this world because its original owner had passed away. It was now in his hands. "Father, you've finally emerged from cultivation." At this moment, a surprised and joyful voice rang out. Shangguan Aojian ran over from the place where he cultivated delightfully. Jian Chen stood up and leapt off the rock gently. He smiled at Shangguan Aojian. He was extremely satisfied with this son of his because he could not see any arrogance on his son at all. Both his personality and morals satisfied Jian Chen. Afterwards, the two of them began to talk about everything. Jian Chen told Shangguan Aojian about matters regarding cultivation, while Shangguan Aojian told him about a few interesting things he had experienced throughout the years. "Father, you have no idea. My younger brother Changyang Su has challenged me constantly in the past years, but I've reduced him to a horrible condition every time. He runs away every time." Shangguan Aojian could not help but laugh aloud when he mentioned Changyang Su. Jian Chen also broke into laughter when he heard that. He said, "Changyang Su's not even a saint king right now, yet you're no weaker than a saint emperor. There are even many saint emperors who aren't your opponent. Aren't you just bullying your younger brother?" Though, Xiao Bao, I still haven't taken you to see your grandfather and grandmother yet. It's time for them to know your other identity. Shangguan Aojian could not help but become slightly eager when he heard his father's words. He had seen his grandfather and grandmother before, but they had never learned that he was actually Jian Chen's son, and they always treated him as the young island master of Three Saint Island. Internally, he desired their recognition as their grandson. Chapter 1649, Prior to the Negotiations. 3. Father, when are you going to take me to see grandfather and grandmother? Shangguan Aojian asked. Then he seemed to think of something and smiled. Before, when I wanted Changyang Su to call me elder brother, he was completely unwilling. Once I see grandfather and grandmother, he'll have to call me elder brother. I really do look forward to how his face will be like at that time. Jian Chen could not help but smile after hearing that. He looked at Shangguan Aojian gently and said, once we leave Three Saint Island, I'll take you to the Changyang clan. Then Jian Chen turned towards Shangguan Mu'er and said, Mu'er, you should come along as well to see my parents. A sliver of eagerness appeared in Jian Chen's gaze. Shangguan Mu'er remained silent. There was conflict in her eyes, but she still ended up gently nodding after quite some consideration. Jian Chen was immediately delighted when he saw Shangguan Mu'er agree. According to his understanding of Shangguan Mu'er, she would have declined without any hesitation if he brought it up in the past. Now that she agreed, it meant that she really had changed quite a lot across the years. There are just 2 years before the day you decided on with the Spirit King will arrive. Have you made up your mind about the matter of territory? How much land do you plan on giving to the world of Forsaken Saints? The topic of the conversation changed, and Shangguan Mu'er mentioned the matter of land to Jian Chen. Jian Chen shook his head gently. Even until now, he still had not made up his mind about just how much land to give to the other world. This matter would affect the sea race, 100 races, and magical beasts as well, so he needed to discuss it with the respective leaders. Father, I wandered the Tianyuan continent often in the past few years. Because the Tianyuan continent was going to give up some land to the foreign world, I specially went to the places that were about to be handed over. I found that more or less half the people who lived there were against the matter. There were even some people who had become determined to protect their homelands, contacting other clans and sects who shared the same mentality to form a group. These people planned to stop the arrival of the foreign world. They would rather die in battle than give up their territory. After all, these sects and clans have remained in the same place for many years already. Some of their ancestral homes are there as well, so getting them to leave will be very difficult or even impossible. They won't waver even in the face of wealth enough to sway countries, said Shangguan Aojian. Jian Chen frowned when he heard that. He immediately expanded his soul and enveloped the entire Tianyuan continent in a single moment. At that moment, the countless people who lived there were all under his observation. As expected, he saw countless humans who were about to face relocation on the lands that the world of Forsaken Saints had demanded. There were sects, clans, and even a few rather powerful countries. They had clearly already formed an alliance, all flying flags of the alliance. They were all ready to die for their cause. Among the countless people conversing, Jian Chen learnt from a few people that most of them had no ill will towards the sovereigns making the decision. They were just extremely reluctant because they had been born and grew up on their land. The land was also property and heritage that had been passed down across countless years for them. If they had to relocate just like that, it would basically mean that everything they had built up across the generations would be lost. Even though the sovereigns had promised to make it up to them, even though they knew the great sacrifices the other world had made against the crisis of the world, it was not enough to waver their determination of remaining on their territory because it was their home. At the same time, Jian Chen heard some satisfaction from a few people towards the decisions of the sovereigns. There was even resentment, but not a lot of people were like that. Jian Chen also saw a few generals speak emotionally to their armies in a few kingdoms. Without any exception, what they spoke about was protecting their homeland. They were determined to fight the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints to death. Jian Chen sighed when he observed this. There were quite a lot of human cultivators, amounting to a rough sum of several billion. If they all planned on remaining on their land, an unprecedentedly intense war would erupt against the world of forsaken saints. The losses would be so great that it would be unimaginable. After all, the Origin Realm experts on the Tianyuan continent did not possess absolute control over the countless people on the Tianyuan continent. Even though they were respected and revered, once they did something against the interests of people, there would still be people who would stand forward to protect their interests, regardless of if they were sovereigns or if they could wipe out the people with a wave of the hand. They would protect their homelands, and even death could not make them change their minds. Jian Chen's soul continued to expand, directly enveloping the territories of all four races. He discovered that the same thing was happening with the magical beasts and the sea race. Many of the organizations in the two races had joined together, unwilling to give up their land. Only the 100 races remained rather peaceful, without any signs of resistance or objection. The entire 100 races, ranging from saint emperors to ordinary people, all followed the war god. Anything he said was like an edict from heaven. None of them would object the war god's decision. This was because the 100 races was originally one that possessed faith. Their faith lay with the current war god, Tai Ta. Jian Chen, there are still 2 more years before the negotiations. Have you made your decision? Tai Ta's voice rang out in Jian Chen's mind when his soul enveloped the 100 races. Jian Chen did not try to hide. He told Tai Ta everything he saw. Sharing territory with the foreign world was no longer as simple as it seemed. Jian Chen, you should know about the true identity of the elven god tree. God King Adriana once told me to pull the people from the world of forsaken saints to my side. They're actually spirit sages. The spirit sages are a large race and clan in the higher world. They have quite the heritage, Tai Ta's voice rang out. The two of them were conversing through their souls from several tens of millions of kilometers away. The spirit sages? Jian Chen became stunned. He did not know about the spirit sages, but he did know about the god clan that Tai Ta came from. According to the sword spirits, he learned that the god clan was a peak clan in the saints' world. During their age of glory, it was no exaggeration to call them the greatest clan in the saints' world because the grand prime of the god clan back then was the greatest expert in the saints' world. Even the greatest expert of the immortals' world, the nirvanic immortal Exalt, was not his opponent. Since the spirit sages could raise the attention of the god clan, their power was evident. Chapter 1650, prior to the negotiations, 4. Jian Chen sank into contemplation after his conversation with Tai Ta. He had never thought that the people from the world of forsaken saints who called themselves forsaken saints actually had such a great background, where even the god clan would try to pull them to their side. He could not help but reevaluate the world of forsaken saints. Jian Chen thought for quite some time. The light in his eyes flickered. Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojian did not disturb him when they saw that he was deep in thought. A while later, Jian Chen made up his mind. He became determined and looked at Shangguan Aojian and Shangguan Mu'er. He said, "Let's go to the Tianyuan continent right now." Shangguan Aojian obviously agreed happily to this suggestion. He wished to gain the recognition of his grandmother and grandfather as soon as possible. During the time he roamed the Tianyuan continent, he had gone to the Changyang clan many times. As he was the young island master of Three Saint Island, Changyang Ba and Bayuntian had personally received him every time, so he saw his grandfather and grandmother every time. However, he did not sense any of the affection and concern he yearned for from them, only politeness and respect. This was all due to the fact that he was the young island master of Three Saint Island. This was not what Shangguan Aojian wished to see. He would have accepted anyone else's politeness happily and would not feel inconvenienced in any way, let alone feeling uncomfortable. However, Shangguan Aojian was unable to accept his grandmother and grandfather behaving so politely towards him. It even made his heart throb, making him feel bitter inside. Jian Chen left Three Saint Island with Shangguan Aojian and Shangguan Mu'er. When the two of them left, Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu walked over from the other side with their junior sister Qin Qin. The two of them looked towards Qin Qin and both sighed inside. Several decades had passed, but Qin had already begun her journey of cultivating and attained quite the achievement, so she possessed an extremely lengthy lifespan. As a result, she seemed the same as before, remaining as pure and beautiful as she was in her 20s. The only difference was that she now exuded a sense of maturity. Qin looked in the direction that Jian Shen had flown off and sighed emotionally inside. A sliver of emotion that she had hidden very deeply in her heart appeared as well. Qin had indeed fallen in love with Jian Shen, and even Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu had learned about it. However, she had already understood many things across the several decades. She knew that she was not fated to be with Jian Shen in this life, so she began to hide the emotion deeply in her heart, sealing it off coldly. Jian Shen returned to the Changyang clan in Lore City with Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojin. This time, the three of them did not directly fly in. Instead, they entered through the front entrance. His appearance rather alarmed the guards at the main entrance of the clan. All of them knelt in disbelief. They directly wondered inside about what their fourth young master was planning to directly enter through the main entrance. As guards of the front door, they had never seen Jian Shen enter through here. Every single time, he would move mysteriously, appearing in the clan like he had teleported before leaving in the same way, making it impossible to know his whereabouts. I want to see my parents for some matters. Please send someone to contact them. Jian Shen immediately ordered the guards the moment he stepped into the clan. Yes, sir. This one will immediately contact the old master and madam. One of the guards directly felt confused towards the young master's irregular behavior, but he did not dare to hesitate at all despite his doubts. He replied politely before running inside as quickly as possible, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Jian Shen brought Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojin into the clan and directly headed towards the discussion hall. The three of them did not move very quickly, traveling at an ordinary person's speed. Without any exception, all the groups of guards they passed by would bow towards the three of them. Reverence filled their face. The Changyang clan had been expanded a few times, but it did not occupy too great of a space. Very soon, Jian Shen entered the discussion hall with Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojin. At the same time, Biyao Tian and Changyang Ba received the message from the guard and emerged from the forbidden grounds. They also entered the discussion hall. Jian Shen dismissed all the visible and hidden guards in the discussion hall, so there was only the 5 of them present. So the island mistress and young island master of 3 Saint Island have come to visit. I have failed to welcome you from afar, so please forgive me. Xiang'er, why didn't you tell your father earlier than the island mistress was paying a visit? I could have made some preparations. Changyang Ba immediately clasped his hands to greet Shangguan Mu'er when he saw her. He was unable to contain his respect, but he also blamed Jian Shen a little. Although his son was the greatest expert in the world now, the island mistress of 3 Saint Island was still an origin realm expert. She was so powerful that she was the second greatest in both name and reality. In fact, her deterrence during the negotiations of the 2 worlds while Jian Shen was in seclusion had stopped the origin realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints from acting brazenly. As a result, Changyang Ba believed he should have held a grand welcoming ceremony for the visit of someone so important. Only that was enough to welcome someone like the island mistress of 3 Saint Island. Jian Shen smiled mysteriously. He did not answer the question. Instead, he turned towards Shangguan Aojin and said, Xiao Bao, why don't you greet your grandfather and grandmother? Without any hesitation, Shangguan Aojin took a step forwards and directly dropped to his knees. He said, grandson greets grandmother and grandfather. This scene immediately stunned Changyang Ba and Biyao Tian. The 2 of them stared at the kneeling young island master in disbelief. His words boomed through their heads like a bolt from the blue, shocking them to the point where they had become dazed. They struggled to return to their senses. Xiang'er, what is going on? The young island master is. Biyao Tian felt like her mind had become a complete mess, preventing her from thinking clearly. Jian Shen chuckled, Mother, why do you still call him the young island master? The young island master of 3 Saint Island is actually my son as well as your grandson. I just kept this a secret the whole time, which was why no one on the Tianyuan continent knew his identity. What? The young island master is Xiang'er's son? This, Bai Yintian's eyes widened and her heart churned. She had never thought that she actually had a grandson, and her grandson was already so old. Moreover, she had met him so many times already. Changyang Ba, who stood beside her, became utterly astounded as well. He stared at Shengguan Aojian, no longer able to maintain his composure. However, he soon thought of something and immediately asked, "This child's mother is?" Mu'er greets father and mother. Shengguan Mu'er bowed towards Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. Chapter 1651. Prior to the negotiations, 5, Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian both became stunned. They stared at Shengguan Mu'er in a daze. At that moment, they found that their minds had stopped working. The island mistress of 3 Saint Islands' name was thunderous to their ears. Back when Jian Shen was in seclusion, and the Origin Realm experts of the 2 worlds were negotiating, the Origin Realm experts that belonged to the Tianyuan continent side were absolutely filled with fear. In order to avoid any conflict with the foreign Origin Realm experts, they had set the location of negotiations to the City Lord's estate in Flame City. This was an indication to just how pressured the Origin Realm experts of this world felt when the Origin Realm experts of the other world remained here. During the negotiations, the Origin Realm experts on the Tianyuan continent side could see the fear for the island mistress of 3 Saint Island from the foreign Origin Realm experts, which allowed them to understand that the foreigners would not speak brazenly or try to intimidate them during the negotiations. This was not because of Flame City but because of the island mistress of 3 Saint Island. After all, Flame City would only stop Xiongzhong's group from fighting and destroying the place. If the outcome displeased them, they could have used threats or even just intimidate the representatives of this world. There was no need for them to act so politely and fearful. The true deterrence was the island mistress of 3 Saint Island. Although Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian never took part in the negotiations, they knew a lot of the details due to their unique identity. As a result, the couple felt respect from the bottom of their hearts for the island mistress of 3 Saint Island. Even though she was not as powerful as their son, her existence was enough to deter all the Origin Realm experts from the foreign world aside from the Spirit King. Yet in that moment, the island mistress who they respected so much was actually calling them mother and father. It was just too shocking, shaking the depths of their old souls. Why, you're actually the child's mother? Changyang Ba only recovered after quite a long while. He immediately stared at Shengguan Mu'er with shock and disbelief plastered across his face. He would have never even dreamt of something like this. The female sovereign who he respected so much was actually his daughter-in-law. Shengguan Mu'er glanced at Shengguan Aojian and nodded gently as she saw how shocked the old couple had become. Changyang Ba immediately gasped after receiving her confirmation. His heart beat extremely heavily at that moment. As a matter of fact, his heart had never beaten so quickly. They felt even more shocked now than they felt when they learned that their son was no weaker than the Spirit King. So you're actually my grandson. Tears pooled in Bai Yuntian's eyes emotionally as she looked at Shengguan Aojian benevolently. She could not help but clench the pouch of fragrance that Shengguan Aojian had initially gifted to her tightly. Shengguan Aojian had personally made this pouch of fragrance. He had used large quantities of precious heavenly resources. The value of the heavenly resources was enough to shock countless people. Only now did Bai Yuntian learn that the pouch of fragrance was actually a gift from her own grandson, so her value of the pouch of fragrance soared several times over. There was obviously no longer a need to keep Shengguan Mu'er and Shengguan Aojian's other identity a secret. Very soon, this stunning piece of news spread across the entire Changyang clan, shocking them all. The most shocked person was Changyang Ku. He could only sigh emotionally inside. Soon afterwards, the news spread across the entire Tianyuan continent like wildfire. It had even spread across the 3 other races, surprising everyone in the world. Countless people sighed in amazement. In Flame City, a young girl passed through the bustling streets with a young boy, constantly moving from shop to shop. Whenever she saw something that caught her eye, she would buy it without any hesitation, no matter the price. She was so extravagant that the descendants of many large and luxurious clans could not help but sigh. The two people who seemed like siblings were two of the three Origin Realm experts who guarded Flame City, Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling. However, they had currently changed their appearances, so only those who knew their behavior and habits very well could recognize them. Conversations about Shangguan Aojian and Shangguan Mu'er's other identity were littered across the city. Obviously, the two of them had heard about it as well. The young island master of 3 Saint Island is actually Big Brother's son, Xiao Ling murmured. She thought a little before saying to Xiao Jin, "Brother Xiao Jin, let's go to the Changyang clan." "All right then, Sister Xiao Ling," Xiao Jin sighed a little. He was completely helpless. As a spirit of the attributes, his body grew very slowly, but his mind was unlike Xiao Ling's, permanently unable to grow. As a result, although Xiao Jin seemed like a young boy, he was already as mature as an adult. However, no matter how mature he was, Xiao Ling always treated him as her young brother, pulling him everywhere. At the same time, a young man sat in the forbidden grounds of the city lord's estate, cultivating there. Dense origin energy circulated around him and a tremendous pressure would radiate from him from time to time. The young man was the white tiger in human form. Unlike Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, he worked extremely arduously on his cultivation. He did not spend a single moment on pointless things. He basically spent his entire time cultivating, apart from spending some time with his mother. He would not pause unless something major occurred. At this moment, the white tiger's eyes snapped open. At the moment he did that, the space before him shattered, being reduced to void. Just his gaze alone had surpassed the limits of the space in his surroundings. Compared to the past, his strength had clearly increased. The young island master of 3 Saint Island is actually my elder brother's son. I need to go congratulate him now that this has been announced, the white tiger murmured. He soon vanished. Tai Ta currently sat on the throne in the War God Hall. He radiated with a dense, golden light. The light permeated the entire Divine Hall as if it had fused with the golden Divine Hall. Over 20 Saint Emperor Hall elders sat below the throne. Every single one had their eyes closed, they were also cultivating, absorbing a tiny portion of the golden light from Tai Ta. Suddenly, Tai Ta's eyes snapped open. The dense, golden light around him gradually dispersed as well before vanishing completely. The entire Divine Hall returned to its previous state. The hall elders beneath the throne all stopped cultivating at the same time. They opened their eyes and looked at Tai Ta politely. "Prepare rich gifts. I'm going to the Changyang clan." Tai Ta chuckled aloud and stood up, passing down orders. "Yes, sir. I'll go prepare them immediately," a hall elder immediately replied and left politely. Chapter 1652, Gathering of the Strongest, 1. At the same time, the sea goddess, Yang Lai, Gui Haidao, Feng Xiaotian, Houston, and the 4 brothers all hurried over as well, gathering at the Changyang clan. They all congratulated Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen did not plan anything special to celebrate, announcing Shangguan Aojian's identity as Jian Chen's son was akin to returning to the ancestral home according to the customs on the Tian Yuan continent. Even ordinary people would celebrate something like that, not to mention that this had happened with Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er, 2 sovereigns of the world. As a result, many ancestors from large clans and organizations came without invitations from across the world with rich gifts. Even the patriarch of the Tianqin clan, Qin Shao, matriarch of the Tianmu clan, Tianmu Ling, king of the Qinhuang kingdom, Qin Ji, Quan Yukai, Kara Liwei, the president and the grand elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union had come. Many people who were acquainted with Jian Chen had all come. In the end, Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian could only decline Jian Chen's request of not celebrating the matter. They ordered a large banquet to welcome the guests. Everyone dispersed after the celebrations, but the 4 brothers remained. Jian Shen knew what the four brothers were looking for. After greeting them, he took them out of the Chongyang clan and directly led them to the center of a desolate mountain range. There were a few magical beasts living in the mountains, but they were not particularly powerful. The strongest was only at the 6th class, so the powerful presence that the four brothers unconsciously radiated immediately scared these magical beasts away when they arrived. Jian Shen extended his right hand and a finger-sized tower suddenly appeared. Sword slashes covered the tower and each slash shone brightly. It formed a powerful sealing force, keeping the two sealed. This tower was the treasure from a higher world that Jian Shen had found in the Sea of Despair, the Inata Grand Prime's Inata Tower. The four brothers immediately stared at the tower when it appeared. They were interested as well as confused. This was because the four of them felt a sense of familiarity and unfamiliarity from the tower. The reason why you've come to find me is probably because of this tower, right? Jian Shen stared at the four brothers and said calmly. The four brothers said nothing. Their attention was completely devoted to the Inata Tower. They were drawn in by it. With a single movement from Jian Shen, the Inata Tower in his hand was thrown into the air. Then, under Jian Shen's control, the tower rapidly expanded in the air, becoming something several thousand meters wide, reaching into the clouds in the blink of an eye. Boom! The Inata Tower struck the ground heavily after expanding. With a heavy rumble, the entire ground shook. The tower's weight immediately took over after leaving Jian Shen's hand, and it rapidly sunk into the ground. Jian Shen shook his head rather helplessly as he watched the Inata Tower sink a few dozen meters into the ground. He had not fully refined the Inata Tower yet, so it was a problem every time he placed it down. The tower was as light as a feather in his hand, but all of its weight would come crashing down once it left his hand. As a result, he needed to expand the tower. The bigger it was, the better, as a greater surface area could support the tower's weight. Otherwise, the tower might end up falling to the core of the planet if it remained as the size of a finger. Come in with me. Jian Shen waved at the four brothers before flying through the damaged door of the tower. The four brothers glanced at the damaged tower that reached into the clouds in shock before flying in with Jian Shen. There were a total of 9 floors in the Inata Tower. Parts of all 9 floors had shattered, with huge strands of sword chi hovering at the edges of the 4 different directions, suppressing the floor. Jian Shen took the four brothers to the sword chi in the east of the first floor. He stared at the huge sword chi and said, "You should be drawn towards the Inata Tower. The reason all lies with these sword chi. The master of these sword chi is called the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, a supreme expert who has reached the very apex of another world. I do not know where your cultivation method comes from, but it's definitely related to the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. He might have even created it. However, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt left behind all the sword chi inside and outside the Inata Tower, so they share the same origins as you. And maybe because of this, you are drawn towards here. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt has a total of 4 divine swords, which are the Sword of Mortality, Sword of Reincarnation, Sword of Slaughter, and Sword of Severance. The 4 swords just happen to share some physical features of the swords in your hands. The reason why you could all break through to the origin realm during the battle should be connected to the sword chi the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt left behind. When I subdued this tower previously, 4 strands of sword chi assisted me. They were hidden in my hand, and during your battle against the crisis of the world, the 4 sword chi flew out of my hand out of their own will. They fused with you, which is why the 4 of you could break through together at that time, Jian Shen explained to the 4 brothers. Jian Shen, is the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt a person of a higher world? Ada asked. Jian Shen nodded, yes, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt is a person from a higher world, but he does not belong to the saints' world. Instead, he is from the immortals' world, a world which opposes the saints' world, as well as the greatest expert of the immortals' world. His strength is beyond our imagination. Jian Shen sighed at the sky when he reached this point and said regretfully, unfortunately, his glory has become a matter of the past because he has fallen long ago. He died on the battlefield between the 2 worlds. Hearing that the Nirvanic immortal exalt was already dead, the four brothers' feelings became mixed. They had learnt the origins of their cultivation method, but the original progenitor was unfortunately already dead. What you see right now is the sword chi from the Sword of Severance. If you look at your sword, it's rather similar to the Sword of Severance. I want to see if you can form a connection with the sword chi. If you can absorb the sword chi, it would be even better. Jian Shen stared at Ada in interest as he became slightly eager. Aside from answering the four brothers' questions, he had brought the four of them into the Anata Tower for this reason. He wanted to see if he could make the four of them remove the sword chi. All these sword chi were sealed, sealing up the Anata Tower's power. If the seals were not removed, he would be unable to display the Anata Tower's full strength even if he refined it completely. Ada stared at the sword chi for a while before shaking his head. I find these sword chi both familiar and unfamiliar. Absorbing them is completely impossible because I can clearly feel their strength. Even with me just standing here right now, my heart still beats in fear. If I try to absorb it, I'll be ripped to shreds in a single moment, and I'll die. Jian Shen became disappointed, but he did not become dejected. He brought the four of them to the second sword chi. The second sword chi was left behind by the Sword of Slaughter, corresponding to Heir's sword. However, it was no different from Ada. Heir also sensed some familiarity from the sword chi, but he was still unable to absorb the sword chi. Jian Shen took the four brothers to all four corners of the first floor, but they found nothing in the end. He directly took them to the 9th floor and visited the four sword chi there as well before leaving in disappointment. They exited the Anata Tower. Then what about the sword chi outside? Can you control it or absorb it? Jian Shen stood outside and stared at the sword slashes on the tower. Even though he already knew the outcome, he still wanted to try it. The four brothers stared at the sword chi and closed their eyes very soon. Their presences changed abruptly at that moment as well. Jian Shen's eyes suddenly narrowed. Currently, he could sense that the four brothers seemed to have fused with the sword chi. They're borrowing the sword slashes to comprehend the way of the sword. A thought crossed Jian Shen's head. The same thing had happened with him when he first saw the sword slashes, but he had failed since his realm of comprehension was just too low. Not only did he fail to benefit at all, he had almost suffered an intense backlash. The cultivation method of the four brothers should be left behind by the Nirvanic immortal exalt. They share the same origins as the sword chi. I wonder if they can comprehend it successfully, Jian Shen thought. However, just when he thought of something like that, the four brothers' presence immediately became a mess. They all vomited blood and became extremely pale. Jian Shen arrived before the four of them. Raising his hand, he used Radiant Saint Force to heal them. The four of them had suffered from a backlash. Fortunately, they were not too heavily injured. With his abilities as a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master, they made a full recovery before long. What powerful sword chi! I've never sensed such powerful sword chi. I never thought that I wouldn't even have the right to comprehend it after reaching the origin realm. Ada sighed deeply as he glanced at the sword slashes with lingering fear. However, he immediately looked away again, no longer willing to try comprehend it anymore. Jian Shen stared at the sword slashes. He did not tell them that the sword chi had actually become much weaker than before after conflicting with the Anata Tower for so long. Afterwards, the four of them walked around the tower a few times. The four brothers had also flown to the very top of the tower. They saw the four slashes which were missing sword chi, but they did not benefit from anything at all in the end. Jian Shen, you've already answered our queries. If there is anything the four of us can assist you with in the future, please let us know. We will do everything we can as long as it's within our abilities. Farewell. The four brothers clasped their hands at Jian Shen and left together. Chapter 1653, Gathering of the Strongest, 2. Jian Shen watched the four brothers leave. When they finally left his sight, he sighed gently. There was a hint of pity and disappointment on his face. Aside from answering the questions that the four brothers had, he had another intention. He wanted to let the four of them enter the Inata Tower. He wanted to see if the four of them could somehow remove the seal on the Inata Tower. After all, the cultivation methods of the four brothers were related to the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, and they had only managed to reach the origin realm through the assistance of the four strands of sword chi. In this world, the four of them were the only people who were related to the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, so Jian Shen believed that the four of them would have the greatest possibility in removing the seal on the tower. Although the seal on the tower had become far weaker after so many years, it was still a seal left behind by the greatest expert of the Immortals world. Even after it had weakened, it would not be something that Jian Shen could remove. He would still remain helpless against the seal even if his strength progressed by a few more layers. Jian Shen looked at the damaged tower and stared at the sword slashes. He murmured, "These sword chi have already developed some intelligence. They must have sensed the brothers' arrival. Maybe they didn't react because the four brothers were too weak. After all, they still haven't comprehended the way of the sword. If the four brothers comprehend the way of the sword and come here after their strength has progressed by quite a few cultivation realms, will the outcome be different?" Jian Shen pondered as he stared at the sword slashes on the tower. After a while of thought, he put the Inata Tower away. With a single movement, he disappeared from the location as well, leaving behind only a huge pit the Inata Tower created. Jian Shen passed the next few years peacefully and simply. He either spent his time by his parents' side or guided Shangguan Aojian through cultivation. He also passed on all the experiences he had gathered across the years to Shangguan Aojian. Sometimes, he would stay on Three Saint Island for some time, accompanying Shangguan Mu'er. He would also visit Longevity Valley from time to time, following Uncle Xiao into the fields to do some farming in coarse clothes and bare feet, living an ordinary person's life. He would also visit various places to see acquaintances and friends. This period of time was the easiest and most pleasing time in Jian Shen's life. There was no longer any need for him to be like before, devoting himself to cultivation every moment of the day while remaining wary against enemies, living under huge pressures, where he could potentially become eternally doomed from even the slightest carelessness. In the past, Jian Shen had never even considered such a simple and peaceful life. Now that he could finally spend his days as he wished after so much trouble, Jian Shen valued it extremely dearly. He valued every day, every minute, and every second of it. He would often smile, revealing a sense of being relaxed, which he had never shown before. Through the years, quite a few changes happened to his good friends and acquaintances. The third prince of the Qinhuang kingdom, Qin Ji, had become the king quite a few years ago, while Tianmu Ling had become the matriarch of the Tianmu clan as well. Qin Shao had become the patriarch of the Tianqin clan long ago, and he even had several grandchildren now. Under his lead, the Tianqin clan became the greatest clan in the Zhuya kingdom. It was so prestigious that even the royal family of the kingdom was not as great. Although there had not been many major changes with the Radiant Saint Master Union, the president announced his retirement a few days after Shangguan Aojian's identity was announced. The new president was Quan Yukai. The Grand Elder had retired as well. The two of them had become Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters in the artifact space several decades ago, so they now possessed lifespans of 6,000 years. In their remaining time, they planned on stepping down completely and living a hermit lifestyle, no longer interfering with the matters of the Union. Due to the lack of Saint King ancestors, the Tsar family that once controlled the City of God had completely declined now. Although their ancestor Tsar Kaiyun had become a Saint Emperor, she left the clan as well, no longer bothering with the matters relating to the clan. She had faded away from the Tian Yuan continent. Chang Yanghu remained in the Pure Heart Pavilion to cultivate the entire time. Due to the personal guidance of Feng Shaotian, he seemed to have severed his emotions and desires completely. He had abandoned kinship and friendship. He had never taken a single step away from the Pure Heart Pavilion after entering it, and he did not even visit his mother who was growing weak across the years. Meanwhile, Nubis was probably the happiest one out of everyone. He spent his time traveling around with two women, moving through the territories of all four races. Sometimes, he would find a cave and go at it with the two women. The two women were both Class 7 magical beasts who had assumed human forms. They were burly, broad-shouldered, and powerful, even greater than many of the large men on the Tianyuan continent. Xiao Tianyu, De Gufeng, Yunzheng, Senioran, Sans, and so on basically spent all their time in Flame City, devoting themselves to the development of the Flame Mercenaries. A year after Shangguan Aojian's identity was revealed, Yu Yu and Huang Wan both emerged from seclusion. Their feelings became extremely mixed when they saw Shangguan Aojian. In the blink of an eye, the 10 years that Jian Shen and the Spirit King had agreed on arrived quietly. As soon as it was time, an extremely powerful presence began to radiate from the tunnel connecting the two worlds. A simple-looking middle-aged man appeared. Behind him was a metal sword that hovered with a dark glow. It radiated with soaring sword chi. The sword chi was so powerful that it made space distort. If it were not for the fact that the sword chi was purposefully hidden, it would have been enough to annihilate most of the space in the world. This middle-aged man was the Spirit King. He had punctually appeared on the Tianyuan continent. Behind him were the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. Shen Jian, please come to the City Lord's estate in Flame City. Jian Chen's voice rang out from 1,000,000 kilometers away as soon as the Spirit King appeared. It crossed the distance and boomed thunderously at the location of the tunnel between the two worlds. The Spirit King's face did not change, nor did he say anything. He directly took a step and with that, he vanished. At the next moment, he had crossed the distance, appearing in the City Lord's estate as if he had teleported. He stood before Jian Chen. Between the two of them was a long discussion table. All the Origin Realm experts of the Tianyuan continent's world had already been seated and had been waiting for some time already. The Spirit King observed the composed Jian Chen closely. After staring for a while, he said, "Your strength has increased again?" Jian Chen smiled. "There was some increase during my period of secluded cultivation." The Spirit King sat down and became rather stern. Jian Chen's strength before was roughly the same as his. Now that his strength had increased once again during his secluded cultivation, would that mean that the difference between the two of them had shrunken again? Or maybe they were completely on the same level now. At the same time, the Spirit King was unable to sense just how much Jian Chen's strength had increased. However, he could tell from his battle prowess that Jian Chen might have completely exceeded him already. Chapter 1654, Unification. Even with his mental fortitude, the Spirit King could not help but gasp when he confirmed the matter. Jian Chen's growth rate had completely shocked him. In a lower world where origin energy was thin, advancing any further after breaking through to the origin realm would be extremely difficult. It would require several times more energy and time. In fact, the laws of the lower world even restrict people from reaching godhood. Due to Jian Chen's cultivation method, the Spirit King was previously unable to tell his exact cultivation level, but he could roughly feel that even if he had not reached peak reciprocity, he was not far from it. Any advance in strength at that level was almost impossible because the lower world rarely had the resources to support the cultivation of a reciprocity expert. Despite the limitations, Jian Chen had made quite some progress in just 2 decades. The Spirit King could not help but sigh in surprise from this fellow's speed and talent. As the Spirit King sat down, the other Origin Realm experts all arrived at the City Lord's estate as well. They all glanced at Jian Chen with reverence and various other complicated emotions before silently sitting beside the Spirit King. The Spirit King was not present in the negotiations before, so Xiongzhong had represented the world of Forsaken Saints as he had been the strongest present. Xiongzhong had decided everything, but now that the Spirit King was personally present, the protectors and elders who were great enough to be revered on the Tianyuan continent all shut up obediently. Let's talk about the matter of land. As mentioned in the previous negotiations, our world has already proposed the land we want, and its size is proportional to the territories between the 4 races. We want 1/4 of the Tianyuan continent, Sea Realm, Beast God continent, and Wasteland continent. That way, the land we possess in this world will be the same as yours. What do you think? The Spirit King said calmly as he stared at Jian Chen with interest. He directly ignored the other Origin Realm experts who sat beside Jian Chen. Everyone understood that there would only be two people taking part in the negotiations this time. They would be Jian Che and the Spirit King. The other Origin Realm experts had no right to interfere. In a world where strength reigned supreme, the person who could hit harder would always be right. If this world did not have Jian Chen to rival the Spirit King, the problem of negotiations would not exist at all. Jian Chen shook his head gently in response to the Spirit King's words. Shen Jian, I won't agree to that. Then why don't you tell me what you're thinking? The Spirit King's face remained the same and he responded easily as if he had expected Jian Chen to put up a fight. The Spirit King added, in order to stop the crisis of the world, my world has made a huge sacrifice, paying a great price. If the matter of land cannot be settled peacefully through negotiations, I cannot guarantee you that our world will not resort to military action. The Spirit King's words contained a hint of threat. If the land they were offered did not satisfy them, the world of Forsaken Saints would go back to war. The expressions of many of the Origin Realm experts on Jian Chen's side changed slightly. Their world no longer feared a battle against the world of Forsaken Saints with their current strength, but it would be destructive if a battle did erupt. The Tian Yuan continent, which had already cracked into 4 pieces, might be reduced to nothing. After all, the shockwaves of battles between Origin Realm experts were enough to cause a devastating effect on the world. In the past, Jian Chen and the Spirit King's battle in outer space had forcefully split the moon in half. Even now, when night descended, countless people would see the two halves of the shattered moon. None of them wished for the planet beneath their feet to become a second moon. On the other hand, the Origin Realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints felt prideful because of the Spirit King's awe. They even straightened their backs unconsciously. Due to the fear they felt towards Shangguan Mu'er, they did everything fearfully in the negotiations before, always at the end of their wits. All of them felt extreme indignation because of that. Now that the Spirit King was personally conducting the negotiations, they immediately regained their awe from before. The Spirit King's threat did not anger Jian Che at all because the current world of Forsaken Saints no longer possessed the strength to challenge the Tian Yuan continent. Once battle erupted, the world of Forsaken Saints would definitely suffer defeat because his chaotic body had reached the 9th layer. Even with the crack in his chaotic Niden, which limited him to 80% of his power, just that was far greater than what he had been able to use with the 8th layer. Correct. Your world indeed played a vital role in averting the crisis of the world. If it weren't for your assistance, we would probably all be dead by now. When your cultivators offered up their lives, I promised them that I'd fulfill their final wish so that they can rest peacefully in the afterlife, Jian Chen said calmly. At the same time, a scroll appeared in his hand, which he spread out on the table. On it was all the territories across the 4 races. Jian Chen stared at the map for a while and said, if I directly give you a piece of land, it'll lead to the objection of many people who originally lived there. After all, their land is their roots as well as the ancestral homes of many people. It holds an extraordinary significance to them, even more important than their lives. They would rather die than leave. There have even been many clans, organizations, and countries that have banded together because of this. If you want to settle down in that land, they'll throw themselves at you without any fear for death. As a result, several billions of people in my world will lose their lives in battles to protect their homeland if I directly follow through with your suggestion. I definitely cannot allow that to happen. The Spirit King frowned and asked, then what do you plan on doing? Jian Chen knocked the table with a knuckle and said after some thought, I have indeed come up with an idea to deal with this problem, and that is to unite the 2 worlds, abandon the concept of territory in different races to formally become one. Uniting the 2 worlds, the Spirit King murmured softly. He was surprised. Jian Shen's proposal had completely exceeded his expectations. After all, they were people from 2 different worlds and worlds that had initially gone to war with each other. There would still be some hostility between the 2 worlds. In fact, the Tian Yuan continent had even been shattered because of their conflict. Correct. Unification. Our world will not give you any land. If you want your own land, then use the corresponding wealth to exchange it with people. Although wealth is nothing in our eyes, there are still quite a lot of people who would be willing to sell their land in the world, Jian Shen said sternly. This was the only idea he could come up with that could fulfill the demands of the world of Forsaken Saints as well as maintain the interests of his own world. After all, in the mortal world, wealth could be described as universal. Buying land would obviously not be a problem, and through this method, the world of Forsaken Saints would definitely be able to obtain some land or even more than what they had initially planned on getting. The light in the Spirit King's eyes flickered. He found Jian Chen's suggestion to be rather enticing. Although it would mean that they would need to lose some things in order to get land, their world had existed for countless years and it followed a monarchy system. Just the amount of wealth paid as taxes was an astronomical figure, so the Sacred Spirit Hall had accumulated a huge amount of wealth long ago. Losing some of their resources would not affect them at all. At the same time, they could use those resources to buy land from the various people across the 4 races, so the final amount of land they could end up with would be far greater than what they could ever negotiate for, assuming the negotiations even went their way in the first place. Splitting up the land had a direct connection to the lives of several billion people, so the Spirit King understood that if he continued to insist on dividing up territories, it would be unlikely to proceed smoothly. Jian Shen would never make the decision to take the lives of several billion people. As a result, the unification of the 2 worlds, which would allow the world of Forsaken Saints to buy land, seemed to be the only valid method so far to both solve the problem of land and the lives of several billion people. Chapter 1655, A New Era, 1. The Spirit King sank into his thoughts over Jian Chen's suggestion of unifying the 2 worlds and gaining land through purchase, clearly weighing the advantages and disadvantages of the suggestion. He would discuss with the elders and protectors around him from time to time through communication techniques. For the moment, the city lord's estate became silent. No one spoke on Jian Chen's side. Jian Chen had already presented his exact idea. They only needed to wait for the world of Forsaken Saints' response on whether they agreed or not. This matter clearly was extremely important, enough to influence the world of Forsaken Saints far and wide. As a result, the Spirit King and the others dared not to be careless. They all seemed to be sitting there silently, but they had engaged in discussion long ago. Time passed silently until 4 entire hours had passed. Only then did the Spirit King respond. He said, "All right, I agree to it. Our worlds will be unified from now onwards, and we can buy any land in your world." The Origin Realm experts on Jian Chen's side all began to smile as if a heavy load had been lifted from their shoulders when they heard the Spirit King's response. The matter of land had weighed on their hearts for 2 decades, and they knew that as long as the matter was not properly settled, it was possible for war to break out between the 2 worlds. They did not fear it, but they did not wish to see it either. Now that the matter of land had reached a perfect conclusion, many of them let out a breath of relief. Jian Chen also smiled. He said sincerely, "I hope that our worlds can coexist peacefully in the future. Of course, I must remind you that we won't do anything if you buy land fairly, where how much you can obtain will depend on your abilities, but I do not wish to see you force people into selling. If that happens, we will interfere. There will be some conflicts between the unification of our worlds. If we don't manage it well, it might even erupt into war, and the shockwaves of the battle will be extremely destructive to the Tianyuan continent once Saint Emperors get involved. The Tianyuan continent has already shattered now, becoming extremely weak. It won't be able to endure much at all, so I'd advise some Origin Realm experts of both worlds to form an alliance to prevent this so that they can specially manage this matter and prevent Saint Emperors from taking part in large-scale battles," Houston suggested. Jian Shen nodded slightly. "That's not a bad suggestion. I feel the need to form an alliance to prevent large wars between experts. After all, the Tianyuan continent will not just be our homeland in the future. It'll be yours as well. None of us would wish to see our homeland destroyed at our own hands in the end." "Okay, I agree," said the Spirit King. Afterwards, the 2 sides ironed out some details regarding the unification of the 2 worlds. They both considered that unification would not be an easy matter as they were people from two separate worlds. Hence, they set down many rules and restrictions to avoid large-scale conflict between the two worlds. At the same time, they formally established an alliance between the two worlds. The name of the alliance was the Tian Saints Alliance, taking from the name of the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. There was no alliance head, only alliance elders. Without any exceptions, the origin realm experts of the two worlds would take up those positions. The alliance only existed to prevent large-scale conflict between the cultivators of the two worlds and prevent the shockwaves of battle from destroying their homeland. The alliance would not interfere in anything else other. With the negotiations concluded, everyone dispersed. The details of the negotiations were announced as soon as possible. Very soon, everyone learnt about the conclusion of the negotiations between the two worlds. Some people treated it like it was nothing, while others sank deep into their thoughts about the future developments of this world. At the same time, there were other people who began to weep in joy as they cheered jubilantly. They were the people who were prepared to guard their homeland, kingdom, ancestral home, or clan to the death. They originally planned to enter a battle to the death against the foreign world, to protect what belonged to them. However, when they learned about the conclusion, they all became emotional. Many people began to cry uncontrollably. It's Sovereign Jian Chen. It's Sovereign Jian Chen who helped us. If it were not for Sovereign Jian Chen, who stood against our land being handed over, where we are standing now would probably already belong to the foreign world. On the other hand, all of us, people deeply attached to the land, would end up dead on the battle against the world of Forsaken Saints. Thank you, Sovereign Jian Chen. Thank you. Long live Sovereign Jian Chen. The other sovereigns of our world don't really care about our lives, but Sovereign Jian Chen does. He was the one who saved us. It was he who protected our ancestral land. Very soon, some people learnt that the final changes in the decision to hand over land were completely due to Jian Chen. They immediately began to cheer Jian Chen's name gratefully. Jian Chen had protected their homes and their lives. At that moment, several billion people across the world silently remembered Jian Chen. There were even a few cities where people began to erect statues of Jian Chen. People would kneel before the statues every day, and there were even many families who hung up images of Jian Chen on their walls to worship. As the greatest sovereign in the world, he was supreme. However, he was not like the other sovereigns who paid no attention to the lives of those who lived at the bottom of society. He thought for them and spoke for them. He had protected their homes, their ancestral lands, and even their lives. On the other hand, Jian Chen appeared on Three Saint Island. He sat on a rock at the top of Three Saint Mountain. Shangguan Mu'er was sitting beside him, playing her zither. The music she created was beautiful and touching, enough to enchant people. Jian Chen would remain there for the next period of time to quietly overwatch the developments of uniting the two worlds and see if there would be anything he had not accounted for. The world of Forsaken Saints moved quickly once the negotiations concluded. The next day, a large number of sainthood experts emerged from the tunnel that connected the two worlds. They entered the Tian Yuan continent before dispersing in all directions, flying towards the territories of the four races. These people were all saint kings and saint emperors. They were the people the world of Forsaken Saints sent to buy land. They all possessed a large amount of wealth. Of course, since they came from the world of Forsaken Saints, they did not need to worry about being robbed even with so much treasure because there were origin realm experts from their world who watched over everything. Chapter 1656, A New Era, 2. In quite a large, bustling city, the lofty city lord laid back in the air as he watched a performance. Suddenly, a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance appeared before him and directly said, "I want to buy this city." The city lord leapt in fright with the sudden appearance of a person. He became stunned when he heard the person's words, and he only responded after quite a while with much uncertainty, "Are you from the world of Forsaken Saints?" The middle-aged man smiled and introduced himself, "I am Stark. I come from the world of Forsaken Saints, and I am a 6th heavenly layer Saint King." "What? Saint King, the city lord scrambled to his feet and became rather pale. He was only a heaven saint master right now, but he was also the strongest expert in the city. Saint Kings were insurmountable existences in his eyes. I want to buy this city. You can go sort it out with the people in the city. Whether it be money, battle skills, or cultivation methods, they're all things I can offer. I'll pay according to the territory size of each person. Of course, there'll be something in for it for you if you satisfy me as well, said Stark. But this city is the territory of the Luofei kingdom. How can I, the city lord said as he appeared to be troubled. He was rather reluctant to help the people from the foreign world. After all, he was a human, so how could he help a foreign race? However, the person standing before him was a Saint King, so even though he was reluctant, he was not bold enough to directly show it. The Luofei kingdom you speak of only has a single saint ruler. If you end up contributing enough, I can ask the higher-ups to let you into the sacred grounds of our world of forsaken saints to cultivate. You'll definitely be able to become a saint ruler within a decade, said Stark. What? I can become a saint ruler within 10 years? Is that true? The city lord's eyes widened as he became emotional. He became a heaven saint master many years ago, but it would be almost impossible for him to reach sainthood in his lifetime with his limited talent. Sainthood was a fatal attraction to him. Of course. How precious do you think our sacred lands are? Making people reach saint ruler is only a simple matter, Stark guaranteed. All right, I agree. Senior, as long as I can become a saint ruler, I'll do whatever you ask me to, the city lord agreed excitedly. He had completely forgotten about any matter regarding the fact that they were of a different race now that the hope of reaching sainthood was presented before him. Very few people knew that there was an ancient clan of several tens of thousands of years old hidden within an ancient mountain range. Today, the ancient clan had received a special guest. This guest seemed like nothing special, but he managed to enter the clan silently, ignoring any and all defensive measures. The guest stood before the ancestor of the ancient clan and said emotionlessly, "You have an underlying illness that prevents you from reaching Saint Emperor for the rest of your life. I just happen to have the cure for it, and I can make you become a Saint Emperor in 100 years as well as give you the power to increase your clan by 10 Saint Kings. I can let you choose the 10 people, and I'll make them all become Saint Kings within a century. What you have to do is just move out of this mountain range. This mountain range will belong to us in the future." A light flickered through the eyes of the ancestor. He said with a gruff voice, "You're able to infiltrate here silently, and I can't tell what your strength is. If I'm right, you should be a Saint Emperor from the world of forsaken saints. Your conditions are indeed enticing. I might have already agreed if you were a human, but it's a pity that you aren't. It's impossible for you to get us to move out of here. Don't you have enemies? I'll be honest, but we're looking for a lot of land, and there'll be a lot of people who will benefit from us. They'll either obtain the cultivation methods or battle skills they want or have their strength increased dramatically with our assistance. I can't guarantee whether your enemies will become even more powerful," the foreign Saint Emperor said calmly. The face of the ancestor of the ancient clan changed, and his gaze began to waver. "I'll give you 3 days to consider it. I will be back after 3 days." Similar occurrences did not just happen on the Tianyuan continent. It occurred in the sea realm and with the magical beasts quite a lot as well. Not only did the people from the world of forsaken saints lay their hands on the cities of mortals, but they also targeted a few hermit or even ancient clans. They approached them through various ways and used various methods to tempt them for their land. The appearance of a saint-tier battle skill was enough for ancient clans to go to war with one another. The world of forsaken saints had such a great heritage that the saint-tier battle skills that were priceless in the eyes of the Tianyuan continent cultivators were nothing to them. As a result, on just the first day, many hermit clans chose to sell their land for a saint-tier battle skill, a saint-tier cultivation method, or the opportunity to become a Saint King or even a Saint Emperor. They made this decision so that their clans could become even more glorious and greater. Their entire clans moved. At the same time, the people from the foreign world used money and other treasures to buy large quantities of land from mortals. They had even offered a few benefits to the kings of kingdoms, winning over the kingdoms themselves. As a result, the territories of entire kingdoms had basically become their backyard. Of course, the foreign people did not run amok on the land that they had bought. They only wanted territory so that they could provide their weaker clansmen with a better living environment. After all, the environment in the world of Forsaken Saints was just too horrible, completely unsuitable for mortal realm cultivators to inhabit. Countless people would die from natural disasters every day, so the other world seemed like heaven. Jian Shen and Shangguan Mu'er sat on the same rock on Three Saint Island. They were both observing everything unfolding in the world, whether it be on the Tianyuan continent, Beast God continent, Wasteland continent, or in the sea realm. It has only been the first day, and the foreign world has already obtained so much land. If this continues, they'll probably be able to buy more than half of the Tianyuan continent. Jian Shen, have you made any countermeasures in regards to this? Shangguan Mu'er looked at Jian Shen. Jian Shen nodded, I have indeed made countermeasures. The world of Forsaken Saints will only be able to obtain a limited amount of our land through their various measures because I've already secretly ordered many of the large clans and sects in this world to reject their offers of selling over their land. Jian Shen paused before continuing, and the origin realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints aren't stupid. They know that once they buy up more land than we can afford to sell, we'll end up rebounding with full force. They know when to stop. After all, we agreed to them buying our land not because of how powerful they are but because of their contributions to stopping the crisis of the world. They completely understand this. Chapter 1657, Tai Ta bids farewell. Not only were Jian Shen and Shangguan Mu'er observing the sainthood experts from the world of Forsaken Saints as they bought land recklessly, but the other origin realm experts in the world were also secretly watching over these experts from the foreign world as well. Their souls were expanded across the territories of the four races as they paid close attention to the foreign experts, preventing them from going overboard. Only Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling paid no attention to the entire matter, running around every day as they played. Even the white tiger, who had been cultivating like a madman, would expand his soul from time to time and observe everything outside. At the same time, the origin realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints were also secretly observing the clansmen who had come to buy land. After all, every single one of them bore an extremely significant amount of wealth for purchasing land. Not only did they carry the money used in the world, but they also carried a large number of cultivation resources, cultivation methods, battle skills, and so on. The Sacred Spirit Hall had accumulated all of these treasures across the years. Even though it all amounted to only the tip of the iceberg of the Sacred Spirit Hall, it was still enough for Saint Emperors to go crazy over it. Hence, to ensure their safety and to make sure their treasures were not stolen, the origin realm experts watched over everything at all times. As long as the disparity in strength was not sufficiently wide, the origin realm experts of both worlds would be able to sense each other's souls. As they expanded their souls so often, the origin realm experts that belonged to the world of the Tianyuan continent would often come into contact with the extended souls of the origin realm experts, but nothing adverse happened. The reckless purchasing of land had caused quite a tremendous uproar in the world of the Tianyuan continent. They all offered large amounts of treasures and cultivation methods to purchase land, causing the value of Saint-tier battle skills and cultivation methods to plummet. Basically every ancient clan and organization with Saint Kings who agreed to move received a Saint-tier battle skill or a Saint-tier cultivation method. After all, Saint-tier battle skills were precious due to their shortage. Even many ancient clans that had existed for tens of thousand years did not possess one. With the entry of the world of Forsaken Saints, the influx of Saint-tier battle skills and cultivation methods immediately caused these items to lose their former value. The foreign world's use of wealth on mortals and cultivation resources when dealing with cultivators was truly an effective method of obtaining large plots of land. The resources they consumed through this trade would be utterly insignificant to the Sacred Spirit Hall that had existed for countless years. This consumption was insignificant because not only did the world of Forsaken Saints possess more Origin Realm experts than the Tian Yuan continent's world, even their sainthood experts had exceeded Jian Chen's world in number. As a result, there were basically countless saint-tier battle skills and cultivation methods. In the blink of an eye, the world of Forsaken Saints' large-scale purchasing of land had gone on for 3 whole years. Not only did the world of Forsaken Saints gain quite a large section of territory among the 4 races, the strength of Jian Chen's world had rapidly increased in those 3 years as well. The world of Forsaken Saints had brought with them many heavenly resources that had never appeared on the Tian Yuan continent, as well as scrolls that contained the comprehension of the mysteries of the world, which would assist people in reaching sainthood. As a result, many Heaven Saint Masters managed to reach Saint Ruler. However, the people who reached sainthood through the use of heavenly resources would never be able to advance any further in cultivation. Only the small portion of people who broke through using the scrolls of comprehension and their own hard work could progress further. These heavenly resources were not as perfect as the violet cloud peaches and possessed backlashes. Once someone reached sainthood through the use of these heavenly resources, their foundation would be wholly destroyed, restricting them to that cultivation level for the rest of their lives. However, there were still many peak Heaven Saint Masters who chose to break through to sainthood with this destructive method, as their talent limited them to the 6th cycle of Heaven Saint Master. They would be reduced to a skeleton in 1,000 years' time at most if they did not make this choice. Forsaken Saints rapidly entered the world through the tunnel during these 3 years, to the point where their population stretched into the hundreds of millions. These people were not powerful, mostly below Earth Saint Masters. Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters only represented a tiny portion of them. They settled down on the land the world of Forsaken Saints owned. They cultivated there, established families and businesses there, attempting to unite with the people of this world. With their existence, the world gained a new race, the Forsaken Saints. The people from the world of Forsaken Saints always called themselves Forsaken Saints. Many of them did not know where the name came from, let alone what it truly meant. After all, the name had been around for just too long, so long that even past spirit kings were unable to research the subject. It was like a brand, burned deeply into the depths of their minds, such that they would always remember that they were Forsaken Saints. After moving to the Tian Yuan continent's world, the first friends that the Forsaken Saints made were merchants. In the eyes of the merchants, there were no eternal enemies, only eternal profit. They saw the arrival of the foreign race as a great opportunity, so many of the merchants imported the local specialties of certain regions as well as what the Forsaken Saints lacked. They benefited tremendously. Merchants became the first friends of the Forsaken Saints as well as the most welcoming group. Of course, there would be a few cultivators who were journeying through the continents who would end up in some small-scale conflicts and fights against the Forsaken Saints. However, the upper echelon of the Tian Yuan continent did not interfere with these matters. After all, every single expert had grown up in a sea of blood and corpses. This would only be training for them. A small fishing boat was anchored silently several dozen kilometers away from 3 Saint Island, rising and falling with the waves. 2 young men of similar ages stood on the boat in coarse clothes. Their feet were bare and they were fishing. Beside them was a basket that contained several large fish squirming about. It would splash water on the 2 young men from time to time, soaking their clothes, but they did not seem to mind at all. They stared out at the sea as they conversed with great interest. "Father, what do you think we should eat tonight? Do you want to eat Mother's fish soup or roast fish?" "I like the taste of roast fish more," one of the young men said with a smile. He seemed content. "Your mother's fish soup isn't bad. Your second aunt's fried fish is pretty good as well, while your third aunt's roasted fish is delicious. Why don't we try them all tonight? We've caught so many fish anyway," said the other young man. To no surprise, there were 2 swords on his back, one azure, and one violet. The 2 of them were Jian Chen and Shengguan Aojin. At this moment, the space next to Jian Chen rippled, and a burly man suddenly appeared by his side as if he had teleported. The burly man's skin was lustrous as if he was plated in gold. He wore an attire for battle with a cape, making him seem dignified. He naturally radiated with an aura of supremacy. The most eye-catching part was the golden imprint of an axe between his eyebrows. Tai Ta, you've come at a perfect time. Why don't you come back to Three Saint Island with me to try the fish? It must have been several decades since you've tried something like that. It'll be nostalgic, Jian Shen said to the burly man who had suddenly appeared. Tai Ta looked at the fishing duo, and his gaze became mixed with feelings. There was a strong sense of a reluctance to part with them. After a moment of silence, he sat down beside Jian Shen and stared off into the sea. He said, Jian Shen, I've come this time to bid farewell to you. I am leaving. Jian Shen's grip on his fishing rod immediately tightened when he heard that. He only responded after some silence, have you really thought it through? Once you leave, it won't be very easy for you to return. Who knows how long you'll have to wait for? Senior Adriana has already made all the preparations. She is urging me to go to the higher world. I've already thought it through. I will leave soon because I don't want to stay here either. There's no point in staying here anymore, Tai Ta said rather gloomily. Jian Shen glanced at Tai Ta deeply before sighing. He knew part of Tai Ta's reason. Originally, Tai Ta had been engaged to a woman in the tiny village he had grown up in on the Tianyuan continent. However, the woman had been married off to another man in the village many years ago, and she had become a grandmother now. Tai Ta's heart had always ached because of this matter. Tai Ta had always kept this matter hidden and did not tell anyone. However, with Jian Shen's tremendous strength now, his soul could easily envelop the entire world. If he was willing, he could make anything happen in the world, so what happened in Tai Ta's village obviously could not be kept a secret from him. Jian Shen patted Tai Ta's shoulder, you have to protect yourself once you go to the saint's world. We might meet there before long. Jian Shen did not try to persuade Tai Ta to stay. He knew that Tai Ta would depart sooner or later. Tai Ta looked at Jian Shen and said, Jian Shen, come to the saint's world with me. Senior Adriana has told me that I become the ruler in the eyes of everyone once I return to the God clan. Everyone will respect me and listen to my commands. The God clan is a glorious clan in the world of forsaken saints. They're very powerful, so if you go to the saint's world with me, you'll be able to remain in the clan to cultivate. With my status in the God clan, no one will be able to make any trouble for you. Shangguan Aojian was immediately displeased when he heard Tai Ta's words. He grumbled, Uncle Tai Ta, I won't stop you if you want to go to the saint's world, but don't entice my father, or I'll never forgive you. Tai Ta looked at Shangguan Aojian, and his gaze became gentle. He smiled without minding too much, your father is going to leave sooner or later, and it won't just be your father, but your mother as well because it'll be almost impossible for their strength to progress if they remain here. Chapter 1658, Doubts about Jian Shen's identity. Shangguan Aojian snorted gently and turned around, no longer paying any more attention to Tai Ta. He knew that his parents would leave this world sooner or later and that day was approaching. Tai Ta, there are still a lot of things tying me down here. I want to stay a little longer in this world so that I can spend some more time with my parents before I leave. After all, who knows how long I'll be gone for. I don't even know if I'll be able to see the two of them when I do come back, Jian Shen said with a rather heavy heart because he had no idea whether he could return after going to the saint's world. He was not afraid of dying. However, he was still tied down. Even if he had to go, he could not leave in such a hurry. Okay, I'll wait for you in the saint's world. Directly go to the God-swirl plane as soon as you get to the saint's world. I have no idea where the God-swirl plane is, I just heard it from Senior Adriana. Senior Adriana told me that our God clan is located on the God-swirl plane and as long as you make it there, you can find where the God clan is by asking anyone, Tai Ta said sincerely. Alright, I'll come looking for you on the God-swirl plane if I get the chance. Jian Shen paused with that and became stern, but Tai Ta, I hope you can promise me something. Please do not tell anyone in the God clan about me. The more powerful they are and the more authority they possess, the more you cannot speak of me. Okay? Why? Tai Ta asked in confusion. Jian Shen paused for a short moment before responding, "Don't ask me now. Anyway, just don't mention my existence randomly in the God clan. Please do not mention the 2 swords I possess to the upper echelon of your God clan in particular, and it's best if you keep it a secret from people who aren't a part of the God clan as well. You'll learn the reason in the future." Tai Ta understood the significance of the matter when he saw Jian Shen's seriousness. He immediately nodded solemnly and guaranteed, "Okay, I agree. I won't speak of it randomly. I don't know the reason, but I believe you because you are my best brother." Jian Shen sighed gently and pulled back his rod. He pulled out a 60 centimeters in length fish out of the water. Jian Shen removed the fish from the hook before throwing it into the basket, and Ming Dong. Ming Dong was sent to the Saints' World several years ago. With his strength back then, it definitely would have been challenging for him to survive in the Saints' World. His life will be in danger if he shows any carelessness at all. It has been so many years, and I wonder how he has been. I worry about him the most. Tai Ta, since you have the God clan in the Saints' World, I hope you can look for him using the God clan once you go to the Saints' World if you can. Jian Shen became worried when he mentioned Ming Dong. However, he still had some hope that Ming Dong had not been stranded in some place and the Anata Grand Prime's organization had protected him instead. After all, Ming Dong had been sent away by one of the Anata Grand Prime's treasures, the Fortune Jade Pedestal, in the heavenly palace of Bisheng. The matter would surely involve the Anata Grand Prime. It might have even been a way for the Anata Grand Prime to choose a successor. If that were the case, Ming Dong's safety would have been guaranteed, but if it were not, it would be a horrible situation for Ming Dong to be stranded in a higher world. Don't worry. The matter has always been weighing on my mind. Ming Dong is also my friend, so I'll immediately get people to look for Ming Dong once I get back to the God clan. Tai Ta slapped his chest and guaranteed. Tai Ta and Jian Shen spoke for a very long time, only leaving when they knew it had become late. This was because both of them understood that this would be the last time they met in this world. Next time, they would see each other in the Saints' World. With Tai Ta's departure, Jian Shen and Shengguan Aojian returned to 3 Saint Island. Jian Shen's heart felt rather heavy. First, Ming Dong had been sucked away, then his sister was taken away without him even getting the chance to bid farewell. Now, Tai Ta was about to leave as well. He would lose one more close friend. Aside from this, what bothered Jian Shen the most was the identities of Tai Ta and himself. He was a successor of the Immortals world, a disciple of the Sword sect of Violet Heavens. This was an unshakable fact. Ever since he cultivated the Azulate Sword's law, ever since he cultivated the chaotic body, ever since the Sword spirits took him as his master, his identity had changed. Meanwhile, Tai Ta was a part of the God clan from the Saints' World. The Saints' World and Immortals world were hostile towards one another, so he really did not know whether his relationship with Tai Ta would remain the same once his identity was revealed. Aside from Tai Ta, there was also his sister Changyang Mingyue who worried for him and protected him since their youth. Jian Shen felt that a huge boulder was weighing on his heart when he thought of these matters. He felt nervous from how suffocating it felt. Internally, he was even slightly afraid of facing all this. In the War God Hall, Tai Ta sat on the throne boldly. His face was calm, but his eyes shone coldly and vigorously. He seemed dignified. The current him was no longer the country bumpkin who was just born yesterday. Tai Ta had truly matured in the past few decades, whether it be his temperament or personality. Jian Shen asked me to keep the matters about him a secret from the upper echelon of the God clan, in particular, his 2 swords. I can't even mention it to outsiders. Why did he ask for something like that? Is there a secret that needs to be hidden? Tai Ta thought about what Jian Shen had told him and became curious. Jian Shen doesn't want me to reveal this to other people. That means that it'll threaten his life if I do. Jian Shen is my best friend, and I won't allow anyone to harm him, even if it's the upper echelon of the God clan, Tai Ta murmured gently. Towards the end, his bright eyes shone with 2 rays of light. But if I want to protect Jian Shen, I have to know what he's fearing and deal with the source of the problem. But from Jian Chen's words, everything seems to be related to the two swords. After a moment of silence, Tai Ta stood up. He took a step and suddenly vanished from the divine hall. The elven god tree reached into the clouds within the forbidden ground of the elves. It radiated with a tremendous presence of life. The forbidden grounds were quiet, without anyone to be seen. Only the elven queen had the right to enter and leave as she pleased. Even the elven elders could not set foot in here so easily. At this moment, there was suddenly a flash of golden light. A figure had appeared silently before the elven god tree. He was several meters tall and extremely burly, while his skin was golden. He wore a cape and naturally radiated with a sense of supremacy. Adriana greets the war god. Before the elven god tree, an illusionary woman appeared. She bowed towards Tai Ta, who had suddenly appeared. Adriana, I want to ask you if you recognize the two swords used by my brother Jian Chen, Tai Ta questioned. After a moment of hesitation, she shook her head and said, War God, I do not recognize the two swords. However, the two swords are violet and azure and their sword chi are unique. They do resemble a set of legendary treasures. What treasures? Tai Ta's eyes narrowed, and he continued his questioning. He already realized that he might be able to find out what Jian Chen feared from Adriana. Adriana recalled the past and said, they're supreme treasures of the immortals world, the azulate swords, also known as the twin swords of Yin and Yang. They are one of the 10 great god artifacts of the immortals world. They are the sect treasures of the sword sect of Violet Heavens, the chief sect of the 9 great sects in the immortals world. It's said that the founding ancestor of the sect, Violet Heavens Immortal Exalt, personally forged the two swords. The Violet Heavens Immortal Exalt is a peak expert from the immortals world, one of their 5 grand exalts. Adriana's expression suddenly became rather complicated, and she said hesitantly, except that we're enemies with the immortals world. If Jian Chen's swords are the twin swords, then, if they are, then what? Tai Ta asked in a deep voice. If they are, Jian Chen definitely won't be able to keep them, but that's given that he doesn't have any ties to the immortals world. If he does, he'll become the public enemy of the saints' world and might even be hunted down by several grand primes. It's just that right now, Jian Chen's swords only resemble the twin swords from the immortals world. After all, their difference in power is just too extravagant, replied Adriana. Chapter 1659, Tai Ta's departure. Tai Ta fell silent. He did not delve into the matter of the immortals world. Right now, all he was thinking about was Jian Chen. Everything that Jian Chen had said to him earlier and his stern expression clearly appeared in his head. If Tai Ta were the same country bumpkin from several decades ago, he would have never thought so much. However, he had truly matured after he became the war god of the 100 races and reached the origin realm. After learning all this from Adriana and connecting it to what Jian Chen had told him before, he was basically certain that Jian Chen was related to the immortals world. He did not know whether Jian Chen's swords were the azulate swords from the immortals world, but he knew there was a connection between the two. A while later, Tai Ta suddenly stared at Adriana sternly and said with a heavy voice, Adriana, Jian Chen is my best brother. It doesn't matter whether he has any connections to the immortals world, but you cannot reveal anything regarding him, especially in regards to his two swords. Even if the upper echelon of the God clan asks you, you cannot speak of it. Do you understand? Although Adriana was the greatest God King of the God clan, Tai Ta had basically directly ordered her right now. He seemed dignified and possessed an undefiable sense of power. Yes, sir, Adriana replied politely. Not only was she completely fine with Tai Ta's words, but she also behaved like the situation was natural. As a member of the God clan, Adriana deeply understood just how revered the war god was in the God clan. Even though the current war god was still very weak and had not fully matured, even hall elders or great elders in the God clan who basically led the entire clan would not dare to disobey the war god's will. This was because the war god was the soul of the entire god clan. He was their belief and their pillar of support. Only when the war god was present was their god clan truly the god clan. I want you to swear. Tai Ta still did not find it enough as this matter was directly related to the life of his best brother. He could not afford any mistakes. I, Adriana, swear. A month later, the elven god tree that had remained rooted in the forbidden grounds of the elves for millions of years vanished. Meanwhile, a vast swathe of kneeling people had already gathered. They extended from the top of the mountain to the base. From afar, it even seemed like the entire mountain had donned armor made from countless hundred races cultivators. That was not all. There were also countless cultivators of the 100 races who knelt on the land around the mountain. They reached into the hundreds of millions. It was such a grand view that it was enough to shock anyone and everyone. This was because today was the day the war god would leave this world and venture into an entirely new one. Everyone from the 100 races would gather here to send off the war god as long as they could. Across the wasteland continent, there were even more members of the 100 races who could not make it due to their strength and the distance, or there would have been even more people gathered here. The golden divine hall at the top of War God Mountain that everyone knelt towards suddenly began to shine with a dazzling golden light. The light was so bright that it outshone the sun, replacing it as the only source of light in the world. It illuminated the wasteland continent one last time. The War God Hall slowly rose up from War God Mountain, climbing higher and higher and faster and faster. In the end, it turned into a streak of golden light, shooting into outer space at an extraordinary speed. At the same time, a considerable swirl gradually formed in outer space, slowly transforming into the gate to the Saints' world. The War God Hall that had become a golden streak of light rapidly approached the gate. At that moment, the War God Hall gained worldwide attention. Regardless of the humans, the sea race, magical beasts, or even forsaken saints, countless cultivators all raised their heads to watch the War God Hall leave. They did not do this to see Tai Ta off, but to see the War God Hall enter the spatial tunnel. Many people revealed envious expressions because they knew that the Saints' world was a higher space. If Saint Emperors entered the Saints' world, it would become countless times easier to reach the origin realm, hence, many Saint Emperors yearned for the Saints' world. Unfortunately, it was impossible to pass through the tunnel without the strength of the origin realm. Jian Shen sat on a rock and drank by himself gloomily on 3 Saint Island. He watched the War God Hall approach the spatial tunnel and raised his glass for Tai Ta. He saw Tai Ta off from there, wishing that everything would go his friend's way in the Saints' world. War God, the Saints' world has a total of 49 Great Plains. The spatial tunnel's connection in the Saints' world is not fixed, so please leave everything to me. I'll control the direction in the spatial tunnel to prevent us from ending up on some remote plane. Adriana's voice rang out inside the War God Hall. Finally, under the gazes of countless people, the War God Hall arrived before the spatial tunnel. However, at this moment, an indescribably tremendous might erupted from the War God Hall. The pressure seemed to make it the supreme ruler of the universe, making the entire universe tremble. Even the laws of the world had almost shattered before it. At this moment, the War God Hall was surrounded in a green light that teemed with the presence of life. The moment the green light appeared, the world trembled and the celestial bodies dimmed. Countless stars darkened. The green light seemed to be enough to destroy the universe. With its appearance, the surrounding space was all reduced to darkness because the light was just too powerful. It was so great that it could destroy a massive planet in a single moment, completely exceeding what the space in this world could withstand. When a meteor 100 kilometers in diameter approached the green light, it was reduced to dust silently. The expressions of countless experts who witnessed this scene from the distant Tianyuan continent changed drastically. Their faces all became extremely pale because the very depths of their souls trembled before the pressure. The eyes of all the origin realm experts in the world narrowed. They were wholly fixated on the green light around the War God Hall as respect appeared in their gazes. Chapter 1660, going together there were also some Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints who remained in this world. They all showed expressions of fear as the pressure was far greater than anything they had ever felt from the Spirit King. God King, Jian Chen stared at the green light from 3 Saint Island and murmured to himself. He had seen God Kings many times. Both Protector Shui and Adriana had come down to this world, but this was the first time he had seen the true might of a God King. They could annihilate universes with a twitch of their finger. In the depths of space, a violet sea of lighting gradually formed. Thick bolts of violet lightning crackled as they rapidly approached Adriana with an indescribable presence of the world. Now that Adriana's strength as a God King was exposed, the world no longer accepted her, so judgment descended. The judgment contained extraordinary power. Let alone the fact that Adriana was weakened and unable to use her full strength, even when she was at peak condition, she definitely would have passed away from such a trial, unless she used the treasure that the experts of the God clan had bequeathed to her for the exact purpose of protecting her from the judgment of the world. However, before the violet sea of lightning had approached Adriana, the War God Hall had already entered the tunnel to the Saints' world while shrouded by the presence of light. It vanished from the world, and with its disappearance, Adriana's presence vanished as well. No longer able to sense Adriana's presence, the sea of violet lightning gradually dispersed in the end. Very soon, the universe returned to its previous peaceful state. Jian Chen sat on 3 Saint Islands silently as he drank by himself. He gazed at the calm space in a daze. He knew that Tai Ta had left. He had left this world, and he had no idea when they would meet again. Perhaps, they would not meet again. The countless people kneeling towards War God Mountain rose on the wasteland continent. All of them were filled with a heavy reluctance to part with the War God. The War God Hall that had basically become the representation of the wasteland continent had vanished, now replaced by a golden statue. The statue stood 300 meters tall and seemed lifelike as if it was Tai Ta himself. A mysterious power circulated within it. It stood there silently with an indomitable spirit, radiating with power. It shone with golden light, which illuminated the surroundings. This was a statue that Tai Ta had left behind. The statue contained his power. It became the new symbol of the 100 races and was also a powerful defense, used to protect the 100 races. The uproar caused by Tai Ta's departure settled very soon. His departure made all his good friends feel depressed, while the people who had no ties to him did not care at all. At most, they would just think back to when Tai Ta led the 100 races against the world of Forsaken Saints and the crisis of the world and sigh as a result. Meanwhile, all the Forsaken Saints living in the other world basically felt relieved and joyful for Tai Ta's departure, without any exception whatsoever. Tai Ta's departure meant that there was one less powerful Origin Realm expert for the world. The world of Forsaken Saints had gained a complete, firm footing in the world of the Tian Yuan continent now. Whether it was the Tian Yuan continent, Beast God continent, Wasteland continent or the Sea realm, they had gained a sizable piece of territory in all these places. They did not continue to expand unceasingly, as the upper echelon of the foreign world understood that although Jian Chen had told them that they could buy land as they pleased, expanding too recklessly would lead to the interference of Origin Realm experts. The Forsaken Saints were currently attempting to unite with the people of the world completely. The people in charge of the world of Forsaken Saints did not wish to become locked in a dispute with the Origin Realm experts of the other world as it would be detrimental to their race's future developments. Aside from that, they were not overly ambitious in the first place. They only wished to find a safe place for their weaker clansmen. The sainthood experts would mostly remain in their original world. With the entry of the Forsaken Saints, the world of Forsaken Saints also opened itself up to the people of the 4 races. The abundant energy of the world and origin energy in the world of Forsaken Saints had drawn over quite a few sainthood experts across the 4 races. Apart from that, many of the heavenly resources and treasures in the world of Forsaken Saints could not be compared to the other worlds as their origin energy had never run out, allowing them to grow in an environment rich in origin energy across so many years. Just this was enough for many sainthood experts to treat the world of Forsaken Saints as a holy land. Many sainthood experts set off by themselves in search of fortuitous encounters to increase their strength. Although the laws of the world were gradually reaching completion in the world of the Tianyuan continent and origin energy was reappearing, it would not be able to rival the world of Forsaken Saints so soon. As a result, the world of Forsaken Saints became a place where many sainthood experts needed to journey to. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed since Tai Ta's departure. In those 3 years, Jian Chen remained on Three Saint Island, rarely ever leaving the island. He did not pay attention to the developments of the outside world, nor did he interfere with anything on the Tianyuan continent. He lived a life away from society. Jian Chen had taken his parents to Three Saint Island very early on. They lived on Three Saint Island. Yu Yu and Huang Wan were also cultivating on Three Saint Island. Jian Chen did not go into seclusion or cultivate across these years. He lived a straightforward and plain life, completely living like an ordinary person. He would take the boat out with Changyang Ba and Shengguan Aojian from time to time to go fishing. He seemed to be extremely satisfied. In recent years, Shengguan Aojian had stopped cultivating as well. He spent all his time by his father's side, but only he knew that he was not happy at all despite often smiling and laughing on the surface. Instead, he felt that he was in extremely low spirits. He knew his father. He understood that the changes with his father were just signs of him leaving this world soon. By the fireside, Jian Chen, Shengguan Aojian, Shengguan Mu'er, Changyang Ba, Bai Yuntian, Yu Yu, Huang Wan and so on all ate the roast fish with great interest. The entire family drank some alcohol and talked about everything. They were cheerful. Although Huang Wan and Yu Yu were the ones who had been formally wed to Jian Chen, they did not feel any reluctance to accept Shengguan Mu'er at all. Instead, they accepted Shengguan Mu'er as their elder sister, as there were many cases of a man taking up many wives on the Tianyuan continent, let alone someone as outstanding as Jian Chen. At this moment, the expression of Jian Chen who was eating his fish changed. He slowly put down the fish he was eating and said to everyone, "I have some matter that I must attend to, so I must leave temporarily. I will return very soon." With that, Jian Chen vanished. At the same time, there was a flash of violet light across the distant sky, disappearing into the horizon. The Cross Mountains were the largest mountain range on the Tianyuan continent. At the same time, it was a forbidden zone to many human cultivators. Even saint rulers could not set foot in there carelessly because a powerful magical beast clan controlled the mountain range. It was the Gilligan clan. Even though the situation with the world had changed, the Gilligan clan was not affected because their dwelling was basically a place humans never set foot in. Coupled with the deterrence from the winged tiger god, even saint emperors were not bold enough to provoke them, allowing the clan to continue thriving. At this moment, on a mountain peak that reached into the clouds in the depths of the Cross Mountains, a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance sat on a stone seat. His clothes were simple, and his ink-black hair was let down casually behind him, buffeted in the wild wind. Before the middle-aged man was a stone table. There were 2 exquisitely crafted jade cups on the table and a jug of alcohol that was not particularly large. It gave off an enchanting fragrance. At this moment, a violet streak of light arrived with a flash. A young man who only seemed to be in his 20s had appeared on the top of the mountain. The young man was very handsome. His face was resolute, and his eyebrows were straight and defined. He gave off a sense of sharpness, while his eyes shone brightly as if swords were hiding in them. The young man was Jian Chen. "Shenjian, why have you called me here?" Jian Chen looked at the middle-aged man on the stone seat and asked calmly. The middle-aged man was the supreme ruler of the world of Forsaken Saints, the Spirit King. Shenjian extended his hand to invite Jian Chen to sit down. He said, "I've called you over because I have something important I want to discuss with you." Jian Chen sat down before Shenjian, and Shenjian personally poured a cup of alcohol for Jian Chen. He said, "The matters with the world of Forsaken Saints have basically been dealt with. It's almost impossible for my strength to increase if I remain here, so I plan on going to the higher world." Shen Jian looked at Jian Chen and continued, "What about you? When do you plan on leaving?" Jian Chen did not hurry. He took a tiny sip of the alcohol. The alcohol was a rare, precious variety, but Jian Chen was unable to taste its deliciousness in his mouth at all. Instead, it was filled with bitterness. "I'm not like you, lonely and basically having no ties apart from the clansmen of the world of Forsaken Saints. I can't come and go as I please, with nothing holding me down. There are just too many ties in this world for me. Not only are there the parents who raised me, but I also have wives and many friends who had once fought alongside me. The Saints' world is dangerous. In this world, no one can stop us, but once we go to the Saints' world, we're nothing. I might never be able to see the people close to me ever again once I leave," Jian Chen said bitterly. "So you plan on staying here forever?" Shen Jian asked. Jian Chen shook his head. "I will go to the Saints' world, but I'm not going to leave in a hurry. At the very least, I have to spend some more time with my parents and my wives." "Actually, you can take your parents and those close to you with you. Although they haven't reached the origin realm, as long as you use something that can hold people, you'll still be able to pass through the spatial tunnel and enter the Saints' world," said Shen Jian. "With my current strength, it'll be difficult to gain a stable footing in the Saints' world. My life will be in danger from even the slightest carelessness. Am I supposed to take my parents with me and live a life on the run? If that's the case, I might as well leave them here so they can live a peaceful and happy life instead." Jian Chen laughed self-deprecatingly. He had never considered taking his parents with him to the Saints' world. At the very least, he needed the power to be able to gain a stable footing in the higher world and ensure that he could protect his parents before even considering the thought. "When do you plan on leaving?" Jian Chen continued. There was a sliver of mixed feelings in his gaze for Shen Jian. After all, the two of them were people from the same world in the past, and they were now stranded in a foreign place. Although they had been opponents for a period of time, Jian Chen still felt familiar with Shen Jian. "I can leave whenever I want, but just as you've said, the Saints' world is dangerous. With my current strength, I'll probably even struggle to keep myself alive, so I planned on going with you. With our strength combined, I believe we'll be able to gain a footing in the Saints' world without long." The Spirit King looked at Jian Chen and said seriously. After a slight moment of thought, Jian Chen agreed with pleasure. He said, "All right, we can go together, but you need to give me some time." "All right." Chapter 1661, Refining the Profound Sword Qi. All of a sudden, Jian Chen felt like he no longer had much time left in this world after agreeing with the Spirit King's suggestion go to the Saints' world together. His departure would be much sooner than expected. As a result, Jian Chen valued every single day of the remaining time even more. He spent even more time by his parents' and wives' sides. Apart from them, he also visited his old friends frequently, such as Qin Shao, Tian Muling, Qin Ji, De Gufeng, and so on. Several decades had passed, so the status of his old friends had undergone drastic changes. Whenever they gathered together and spoke about matters of the past, they would all sigh as reminiscence flooded their eyes. 5 days later, Jian Chen heard some heartbreaking news. Kendall's wife, Shen Fang, passed away. During her funeral, Jian Chen appeared with his wives, Changyang Ba, and Bai Yuntian to send her off one last time. Initially, it was supposed to be a very ordinary funeral, but with Jian Chen and everyone else's appearance, her funeral became an extremely great matter, raising the attention of many across the world and apparently caused quite the uproar. Many fighters in this world all sighed emotionally. Shen Fang was a mortal, yet her funeral could actually draw the personal attendance of Sovereign Jian Chen. What a great honor was that! Some people even said that if they could enjoy something like that when they died, they would end their lives right now without any hesitation at all. Shen Fang's departure had caused quite a few people to feel envious, as well as quite a lot of regret. They were envious about her friendship with Sovereign Jian Chen and regretful over how she had such a great but short life. Sans mourned for his mother as he personally buried her. He remained remarkably calm throughout the entire process. He did not cry or show any sadness, but his silence gave away the grief he hid inside. 7 days later, Shenfang's funeral came to an end. Jianshen comforted Sans and was about to leave. "Captain, I want to leave the Flame Mercenaries. Please accept my departure." At this moment, Sans knelt down and pleaded Jianshen. Jianshen paused before turning around and looking at Sans with mixed feelings. He sighed gently. "Sans, your father personally founded the Flame Mercenaries. They are the memories of your father, so how can you leave? Also, I intended for you to inherit the position of captain, except your current strength and prestige in the Flame Mercenaries would definitely lead to the dissatisfaction of many if I passed it on too soon, which is why I still haven't done that. I plan to pass on the position at a suitable time once you've earned your own prestige. You would be the captain of the Flame Mercenaries at that time." Sans shook his head. "Captain, I don't want to inherit the position of captain. Although my father personally founded the Flame Mercenaries, you were the one who did all the development. It had nothing to do with my father. How can I inherit the position of captain? Please revoke it, captain." Jianshen suddenly became stern after hearing Sans' words. He said with a gruff voice, "Sans, do you know what kind of organization the Flame Mercenaries has now become on the continent? The position of captain is enough to make countless people green with envy, yet you don't care about it at all. If your father knew about this, he would not be able to rest easy in the afterlife." Sans knelt on the ground and pushed his head deeply into the ground. He said sorrowfully, "Captain, I'm sorry. I've disappointed you and let you down. I've let down all the years of support you've provided me across the years. You can only blame me for my lack of ambition and ability. The passing of my mother has made me let go of a lot of things in the world. Now, I no longer wish for any glory on the Tian Yuan continent. I only want to manage this inn because it's the only thing that my mother has left to me. It contains the memories of my mother. Captain, please accept my resignation from the Flame Mercenaries." Jianshen looked at Sans, both furious and angered. He appeared exasperated about how Sans failed to live up to his expectations. However, there was also a profound sense of helplessness on his face. He could already see that Sans had made up his mind. Any more attempts at persuasion would not have much effect at all. He would end up forcing Sans instead. Jianshen sighed at the sky after a long while and said, whatever. Since you've already decided, I will respect your choice." With that, Jianshen became dejected. He left with a wave of his sleeve. He had decided for Sans to become the next captain of the Flame Mercenaries long ago, but Sans' choice had just disappointed him. "Thank you, Captain," Sans replied politely. "Sans, you have to remember that the Flame Mercenaries exists because of your father. If you think it through today and want to return to the Flame Mercenaries, that door will always be open to you," Jianshen's vigorous voice rang out. Sans stood up and looked at Jianshen with eyes filled with tears. He thought, "Savior, you've helped my mother nigh far too much in the past years. I'll never be able to repay your kindness, so how can I replace Bai Lian as the captain? Bai Lian is your sister after all. I can never do something like that, never." Several years later, Jianshen finally made up his mind to make the final preparations for Saint's World. After bidding farewell to everyone, he left 3 Island all by himself and went to the tunnel connected to the world of Forsaken Saints. The tunnel between the 2 worlds was no longer as empty as before. Instead, it had become hectic. There would be people of various races passing through the tunnel between the 2 worlds from time to time. There was an island in the water near the tunnel created by a saint emperor. Various merchants had set up stands there, holding huge auctions to auction off treasures obtained from the world of Forsaken Saints. It had already developed into quite a large city. Jianshen did not stay there for too long. He turned into a blur and directly entered the tunnel, heading towards the world of Forsaken Saints. The tunnel had stabilized now, but it still reacted violently to Jianshen's entry with his current strength. It immediately began to shake tremendously as violet streams of energy gradually formed, wreaking havoc in the tunnel. Even saint emperors had to handle the streams of energy carefully. There were still quite a lot of people in the tunnel right now, so the tremors and streams of energy immediately made a few people pale. They all cried out and charged towards the exit as quickly as they could. Jian concealed his presence and carefully moved through the tunnel. He knew that he was too powerful, basically having reached the limits that the tunnel could withstand. If he did not conceal his presence, he would end up making the entire tunnel collapse. At the same time, he flicked a finger and shot out strands of sword chi, dispersing the energy in the distance to protect the cultivators who fled from harm. The sword chi had only reached peak Saint Emperor in strength at most, so he did not have to worry about it damaging the tunnel. When Jian emerged from the tunnel, he saw a familiar, blood-red world. In the blood-red world was a red sun and moon, as if they had been painted by blood. It caused the entire world to be filled with a malevolence feeling. This was the second time Jian had come to the world of Forsaken Saints. He was accompanied by Shangguan Mu'er during the first time and was hostile towards the world back then. He had come for battle, which resulted in a great battle between him and the Spirit King. This was the second time, and this time, the world of Forsaken Saints had gone from enemies to friends with the Tian Yuan continent's world. Even though there would be conflicts between the people of the two worlds from time to time, it was mostly due to interests and did not take a toll on their overall relationship. There were quite a few people gathered on the top of the world mountains. They all stood afar from the tunnel and discussed the changes to the tunnel with lingering fear. Many of them behaved like they had just survived a great disaster. None of them discovered that a young man had walked out of the destabilized tunnel composedly soon after they exited. He was now hidden among the crowd. The young man had erased his presence, preventing anyone from sensing his existence. Even when people glanced past him from time to time, they would not take note of him, missing him extremely easily. There was a teleportation formation set up on the top of the world mountains, 2 kilometers away from the tunnel. As the world mountains were just too dangerous, even receival experts needed to be careful when climbing the mountains as they could die from any carelessness. It made it even more impossible for cultivators who were at sainthood or even below that. As a result, the teleportation formation especially existed to send people out of the mountains. Not only did a few sainthood experts use the teleportation to ascend and descend the mountains, but the protectors and elders also used it most of the time as well after its creation. They basically did not use their strength to climb the mountains anymore. Jian stood in the crowd. As his gaze landed on the teleportation formation, a gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes, but he did not become too interested in the teleportation formation. With a single moment, he seemed to have become an arrow, charging beyond the top of the world mountains with a flash. Quickly, he arrived at a hazardous zone where even Origin Realm experts could die. He flew through the world mountains without any fear at all. Soon afterwards, Jian stopped on a sword-shaped mountain 1,000 kilometers away. Around him, the strong winds whistled loudly, forming invisible wind blades that swept past Jian mercilessly. The wind was so powerful that even Jian had not seen something like this before. Even Saint Emperors would struggle to endure it and would be torn to shreds without much time. Thunder boomed above his head as lightning constantly fell. Bolts of thick lightning would rip through the blood-red sky with deafening sounds frequently. The lightning was even more powerful than the wind. Even receival experts would become injured if they were careless. They could even die. The laws here are the most powerful. I'll refine the profound sword chi here. Jian ignored the strong winds and sea of lightning, just sitting down like that. He began to cultivate. The strong winds ripped through his clothes but failed to harm his body at all. The lightning in the sky would fall from time to time, striking Jian head accurately, but not a single hair of his would be blown away. Chapter 1662, The Sword Chi's Appearance Throws World in Shock. 1. The profound sword chi was a technique that the sword spirits had passed on to Jian. It was the greatest sword technique he knew so far, as well as his greatest trump card. This was because the old master of the sword spirits had poured his heart out and devoted a tremendous amount of time to create this powerful sword technique. It had reached the peak of God tier, and its name had rung through the entire Immortals world in the past as well. It was known as one of the greatest God tier battle skills in the Immortals world. Logically, the greater a technique was, the greater the requirement on the cultivator was to comprehend and use it. Usually, God tier techniques required people to be immortal monarchs at the very least to comprehend and gain a grasp over them, but not all techniques were like that. There were a few special ones that could still be learnt and used regardless of the person's strength, even if they had not become an immortal monarch. The profound sword chi was one of these techniques. Jianchen sat on the top of the mountains and ignored the buffeting from the strong winds. He allowed the bolts of lightning to fall from the sky and land onto him. He did not take any defensive measures at all, directly beginning his refinement there. Even Origin Realm experts suffered the risk of losing their lives in such a horrible environment. No one would go here unless they had to. As a result, just the natural environment here became Jian Chen's best measure of defense. At the same time, with the entire world of Forsaken Saints in perspective, no one aside from the Spirit King could injure him anymore with his 9th layer chaotic body. The profound sword chi has a total of 9 strands. Only by refining all of them can the full power of this peak God tier technique be demonstrated. However, even if I only refine a single strand, its power will still exceed all the sword techniques I know right now. This will become my greatest trump card in the Saints world. Refining the strands of profound sword chi is related to my comprehension of the way of the sword. I can only refine all 9 strands when I become a sword god, but right now I've only comprehended to the major achievement of sword origin. It just happens to be enough to refine the first strand of profound sword chi. If I can reach great perfection of sword origin, I'll be able to refine the second strand. In the future, sword spirit, sword immortal, and sword sage realms will allow me to refine another strand of profound sword chi when I reach major achievement and great achievement respectively, Jianchen thought. He thought about the refinement method from the sword spirits and entered a selfless state of comprehension. Profound sword chi was formed by combining the power of laws from the way of the sword comprehended, the power of the soul, personal cultivation level, and the vital energies of life. As the sword chi used the power of laws as its primary source of strength and had several other powers combined into it as well, it was much stronger than any power of laws that could be used at that level. Although it seemed simple on the surface, it contained the mysteries of the universe, making it infinitely profound and almost heaven-defying. Only an expert as great as the old master of the sword spirits could come up with something like this. Jianchen meditated on the top of the mountain as the tremendous energies of life tremored. He had mobilized all the vital energies within him so that they entered the most lively state, preparing to refine the profound sword chi. At the same time, he had entered his realm of the way of the sword, having his entire consciousness submerged in his major achievement of sword origin. He began to control the power of laws from his way of the sword, fusing it with a part of his soul's power, his vital energies, and a strand of his cultivation's power. This was the first step to refining the profound sword chi, known as the fusion of heaven and origin. The heaven referred to the power of laws in the way of the sword, as the power came from the world and was one of the 3,000 great ways, so it was called heaven. The origin was not referring to the origin in the origin realm, but the 3 powers present in a cultivator, their cultivation, their vital energies, and their soul. The fusion of the 3 powers was called origin, the origin, in refining the profound sword chi and not the moniker used in the saints' world to refer to a cultivation level. As Jianchen undertook the first step in the process of refining the profound sword chi, his body showed signs of withering. This was caused by his vital energies being drained away. During the first step, the power of his soul, cultivation, and life would be constantly drained away, ground away by the power of laws. After all, the power of laws were just too great. Even with Jianchen's comprehension of the way of the sword remaining at the major achievement of sword origin, the power of laws from that level was still much stronger than the power of his soul, cultivation, and life combined. As Jianchen meditated, his body gradually withered and his face became haggard as well. The constant consumption during the fusion process of his vital energies, power of the soul, and power of laws caused this scene. At the same time, his chaotic force was being consumed as well. Chaotic force was his power of cultivation, so his chaotic Niden visibly shrank. Although I can use the power of the way of the sword, every time I've used it is just stacking it on top of chaotic force at most, not truly fusing them. Fusing the 4 powers will be extremely difficult, so this first step will be the hardest. I'll need to reach a juncture where I find the balance between the 4 powers if I want to succeed. Then I need to fuse them all in one stroke and complete the first step, Jian Chen thought. He already knew how difficult it would be to refine profound sword qi. If he failed to complete the first step before his vital energies, power of cultivation, and power of soul ran out, his attempt this time would end in failure. Fortunately, he could recover everything he consumed in the process, so even if he did fail, his life would not be in danger. He could recover and continue trying. Jian Chen spent a total of 10 years on the first step but still failed to succeed. By now, Jian Chen had been reduced to a bag of bones, while his face was waxen. He seemed ancient. His head full of hair had withered as if all the signs of life had been drained from it. I can't last much longer. It's just too difficult to combine the power of my cultivation, soul, life, and way of the sword. It looks like I can only end my first attempt in failure, Jian Chen thought. However, he did not become dejected because the profound sword qi was a peak god-tier technique. Refining it would obviously be difficult. However, just when Jian Chen wanted to give up, a gleam of light suddenly flashed through his eyes. He could clearly feel that although the power of laws continued to eat away the other 3 powers when they came into contact with each other, a tiny sliver of power had entered the power of laws. A juncture. This is the juncture of success. Jian Chen's attention gathered, and without any hesitation, he immediately poured the vital energies, power of cultivation, and power of soul into the power of laws despite the former 3 almost running dry. He wanted to complete the most crucial step in a single stroke. Finally, just when Jian Chen's vital energies and power of the soul were about to run dry, he smiled victoriously. 3 inches before his forehead hovered a finger-sized white sword qi. The sword qi was small, but Jian Chen could clearly feel the greatness of the power it was hiding. It had reached a level that was enough to make him shiver. I never thought that the power of laws would become so great after fusing with other powers. Jian Chen stared at the tiny sword qi with great interest. The sword qi was created from the fusion of the powers of his soul, cultivation, life, and laws, so the power contained in the sword qi had even surpassed the power of laws before fusion. This was a power that was even greater than the power of laws. It was on a whole new level, even though it was so weak right now. There are 2 steps to refining the profound sword qi. I've already completed the first step now, but the second step should be much easier in comparison. Chapter 1663. The sword qi's appearance throws world in shock. 2. The second step to refining the profound sword qi is to fuse it with the soul. The sword qi will reside in the soul and be nourished there, while its power will constantly increase as my comprehension of the way of the sword deepens. Jian Chen looked at the profound sword qi floating before him. He had become very weak now, to the point where both the power of his soul and vital energies had never been lower before. Right now, he was basically a bag of bones, but he was still filled with excitement and joy. He finally possessed a trump card to protect himself after venturing to the saint's world with the refinement of the profound sword qi. He did not need to fear even if he confronted people stronger than him, given that their difference in strength was not overwhelming of course. Jian Chen closed his eyes and began the second step to refining the profound sword qi, which was also the final step. Only after completing this could he regard his refinement of the profound sword qi as complete. Jian Chen's power of the soul, cultivation, and life was no longer consumed during this step. Although he was unable to recover his lost cultivation for now, his vital energies gradually recovered under the regenerative abilities of the chaotic body. His power of the soul behaved similarly, except it returned extremely slowly compared to his vital energies. Although the second step of refining the profound sword chi was easier than the first, it still took a lot of time. Time flashed by. Jian Shen had completely lost all sense of time as he refined the profound sword chi, so in the blink of an eye, he had spent another 5 years on the second step. The 5 years were just enough for him to complete the second step, and the profound sword chi floating before his forehead vanished at the moment of completion. It entered his sea of consciousness, which nurtured it at all times. Jian Shen opened his eyes the moment he completed the process. He had recovered half of his vital energies in the past 5 years, so his body had returned to its previous state. This was all from the automatic regeneration of his chaotic body. If he focused on regenerating his vital energies, he would recover even faster. Jian Shen stood up from the position that he had remained in for 15 years. With a flash of light through his eyes, a strand of white sword chi immediately appeared above his head. The sword chi was not very big at all. In fact, it could be described as tiny. It was only as long as a finger and shone with dazzling white light. However, the moment the sword chi appeared, a devastatingly powerful pressure erupted from within. As the pressure expanded, the terrifyingly strong winds in the center of the world mountains and the flickering lightning all calmed down. The wind stopped and the lightning vanished as if they had fled in the face of terror. The blood-red sky of the world of forsaken saints became dyed white with the profound sword chi's appearance. The color expanded in all directions, enveloping a region of countless tens of thousands of kilometers. It alarmed many cultivators in the world of forsaken saints. At that moment, countless cultivators in the world of forsaken saints raised their heads in shock. The original inhabitants of the world, the forsaken saints, felt strange inside in particular. After all, they had remained in the world for so long and understood it extremely well. The sky had always been blood-red in their memories and had never changed, yet it actually became white at this moment. What's happening? Why has this happened? Are there experts fighting? Is this the disturbance caused by fighting? Impossible. Even if Origin Realm experts start fighting, the sky won't go from red to white. I think some great treasure has appeared, and this is the light from the treasure. The light originates from the world mountains. Why don't we head over, and we'll know? Immediately, many of the more powerful cultivators gathered towards the world mountains, but no one dared to venture inside in the end. After all, the mountains were just too dangerous. If they went too deep in, even Origin Realm experts would face danger, let alone Saint Emperors. Several Origin Realm experts emerged from the Sacred Spirit Hall. They all stood outside and gazed at the distant sky, revealing surprised expressions. Immediately, quite a few of them rose up to go and see what was happening. Come back. There's no need for you to go. It's all caused by Jian Shen. At this moment, the Spirit King's voice rang out from the Sacred Spirit Hall. He slowly walked out from the Divine Hall in simple clothes. We greet the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts all bowed towards the Spirit King politely. The ones who had left immediately returned. They understood now. As it turned out, it was all caused by the sovereign of the Tianyuan continent, Jian Shen, so it was no wonder there would be such a great disturbance. The Spirit King stood before the Sacred Spirit Hall with his arms crossed. He looked at the distant sky and became slightly stern. He said, I can sense an extremely powerful sword chi in the depths of the world mountains. The sword chi is so powerful that it can slay godhood experts. Is this the profound sword chi that Jian Shen was speaking of in the past? It sure is terrifying. What? It can slay godhood experts? Spirit King, why, you can't be joking, right? The protectors and elders all became stunned when they heard the Spirit King's words. They could not help but think of Jian Shen's handsome and resolute face as they trembled from the bottom of their hearts. Possessing battle prowess at godhood, even if it was just the weakest among godhood, was already enough to stand supreme in this world. Yet now, a power that could actually slay godhood experts had appeared, so they all became astounded. Jian Shen was still slightly weaker before. It has only been so many years, yet he has already grown to such a level. He has become an existence that I can only look up to, Xiong Zhong murmured with complicated emotions. The other protectors and elders experienced mixed feelings as well. In the World Mountains, Jian Chen put his profound sword qi away in satisfaction. With a single movement, he left the region. Jumping onto the Ziying sword, he flew fearlessly through the sky and headed directly towards the Sacred Spirit Hall. Jian Chen's strength allowed him to travel at unbelievably great speeds, so he arrived before the Sacred Spirit Hall very soon. His arrival shocked the upper echelon of the Sacred Spirit Hall. All the protectors and elders came out to welcome him. They all bowed towards him, whether they were Receival protectors or Returnance elders. They said politely and with many other emotions, "We greet Sovereign Jian Chen." They would have never been so polite to Jian Chen in the past, but now that they had learnt that Jian Chen possessed the power to kill Godhead experts, they became extremely fearful of him. The Spirit King invited Jian Chen into the Sacred Spirit Hall and asked him, "Have you made all your preparations since you're visiting me now?" Chapter 1664, Fully Prepared, There's one last thing to do. We can leave this world after this and go to the Saints' world, Jian Chen said to Shenjian. Shenjian stared at Jian Chen and suddenly smiled. There must be something I can help out with for this last thing, right? That's right. Jian Chen took out a beast fur from his space ring and passed it to Shenjian. He said, "I still need to cast down a teleportation formation so that we can return to this world. Although we still haven't left, I do know that there are many lower worlds. Without a teleportation formation to pinpoint the location, it'll be extremely difficult to return to here. The materials I lack are written on the beast fur. I hope you can help me with collecting them." A teleportation formation. Shenjian frowned. If I recall correctly, casting down a teleportation formation is not an easy matter at all. It requires an extremely great mastery over the way of formations. Even though there have been a few teleportation formations in our world, they've come from countless years ago, and they don't possess the power to cross worlds. It'll be quite difficult for you to cast down a teleportation formation from the Saints' world to here. I don't need a complete formation. I just need an anchor so that I can pinpoint this world's location. Although it's a little complicated, I don't think it'll take too long for me to cast one down, said Jian Chen. Alright, I'll help you collect these materials. Afterwards, Jian Chen returned to the Tianyuan continent and used all the power he could muster in that world to find for the missing materials for the teleportation formation. He himself remained in Flame City, absorbing the information about formations from the sword spirits. They sword spirits were not particularly familiar with formations, but they still had been around for a long time after all, so they knew a lot. Just a teleportation formation to act as an anchor was nothing difficult for them to explain. At the same time, Jian Chen visited Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gue Haidao many times in an attempt to learn how to cast a teleportation formation. Unfortunately, Feng Xiaotian was of no help to Jian Chen even though he knew about it slightly. In the end, Jian Chen visited Fairy Haoyu. After all, she was also a person from the Saints' world and obviously possessed broad insight. To Jian Chen's joy, Fairy Haoyu actually possessed quite some mastery over formations. He immediately asked her about teleportation formations with modesty and benefited greatly in the end. He felt enlightened. Jian Chen visited the Bright Moon Divine Hall often in the following period of time. He asked her about any problems and confusions he encountered about the teleportation formation. Only half a year later, when all the materials he needed were sent to him, did he enter seclusion once again. He devoted himself to studying the teleportation formation and even used up some of his few remaining comprehension tea leaves. Jian Chen had rarely ever come across teleportation formations, so casting them made it even more difficult. Even with the sword spirit's assistance and the knowledge he gained from Fairy Haoyu, he was still very far away from truly being able to cast down one. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Time passed slowly, while Jian Chen had also failed countless times at creating a teleportation formation. The materials he had on him rapidly depleted. Fortunately, the materials were not the greatest kind, so they could be found in both the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. Jian Shen did not need to worry about insufficient materials given how there were countless people across the two worlds collecting materials for him. Finally, Jian Shen achieved success in the 5th year. A glimmering formation was inscribed on a piece of rock, radiating with a powerful pulse of energy. Jian Shen revealed much joy as he stared at the complicated formation with almost perfect inscriptions. Even though the formation did not possess the ability to teleport people away, which made it only half complete, it was more than enough to act as an anchor for the Tian Yuan continent. He no longer needed to fear being unable to find the Tian Yuan continent in the Saints' world with this formation. Afterwards, Jian Shen removed a fist-sized sphere of stone from the teleportation formation and carefully placed it into a wooden box, putting it away. The stone sphere possessed a form of connection with the teleportation formation, which would be crucial for him to return after going to the Saints' world. Afterwards, Jian Shen cast down more than a dozen other formations in various places on the Tian Yuan continent as he was afraid that the teleportation formation would be damaged. He chose extremely remote locations for each one, and he left behind a sword formation to protect each one. At the same time, he removed a similar spherical stone from each formation, storing them away carefully. Jian Shen still did not feel that it was secure enough. In the end, he directly flew into deep outer space and cast down 3 formations across the 2 halves of the moon. Afterwards, he cast down a few more on a few distant planets from the moon. These would form his path back home. He could not afford to make any mistakes. Even though no one would ever destroy his work if he announced it with his current prestige, he needed to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. Jian Shen was finally relieved after settling the matter of the teleportation formation. He returned to the Tian Yuan continent and immediately summoned all the Origin Realm experts in his world. Very soon, the Sea Goddess, Houston, Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Gui Haidao, Shangguan Mu'er, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, and so on all gathered in Flame City. They all seemed to understand why Jian Shen had summoned them there, so they all experienced extremely mixed emotions. Great-grandfather, seniors, I will be setting off for the Saints' world before long. I was wondering if any of you wished to come along. However, the Saints' world is exceedingly dangerous, where the Origin Realm is basically nothing powerful. You have to be mentally prepared, Jian Shen said with mixed feelings. He was unable to remain calm as he was going to leave soon. Although he would still return in the future as he had even cast down the teleportation formations, he did not know who would still be alive when he did return. Oh yeah. We're finally going to the Saints' world. Big brother, you have to take me to go search for Master. I miss Master so much. Aside from Xiao Ling, who cheered excitedly, everyone else remained silent. After a moment of silence, the Sea Goddess broke the silence first. I'm still a little too weak right now. There's no hurry for me to go to the Saints' world, so it won't be too late for me to go after I reach reciprocity. Originally, there were 10 of us who arrived in this world. Currently, only the 3 of us have awakened. We won't be going to the Saints' world for now. We plan on staying here for another 10,000 years. If they still don't awaken in those 10,000 years, we can only choose to leave, said Feng Xiaotian. He also spoke about the intentions of Gui Haidao and Yang Lai. Jian Shen, I'll go to the Saints' world with you. I have the Empyrean Demon Orb, so I shouldn't become a burden to you, Houston smiled, deciding to go with Jian Shen. After the discussions, only the White Tiger, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, Houston, and Shangguan Mu'er planned on going to the Saints' world with Jian Shen. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Gui Haidao, and the Sea Goddess all chose to stay behind. Jian Shen, you have to take me with you. You can't forget about me, the great newbies. At this moment, Newbies barged in loudly despite having been missing for quite a while. He had directly yelled out, showing no respect towards Jian Shen. Chapter 1665. Departure. Jian Shen broke into laughter when he saw Newbies charge in from outside. He said, Newbies, haven't you been living quite the life with your 2 concubines? Going with me to the saint's world will be a life of blood, so why bother at all? You have to bear in mind that even if I go to the saint's world with my current strength, it'll be very difficult to even gain a stable footing. A bloody life is the best life in my eyes because only a life like that will be a challenge. Jian Shen, I've put it very clearly. If you want to go to the saint's world, you can't leave me behind. Otherwise, you're no longer my brother, Nubis said. He was filled with excitement and eagerness, clearly anticipating the journey to the saint's world. Oh right. I heard that only Origin Realm experts can pass through the spatial tunnel to the saint's world. I still haven't reached the Origin Realm, so think of something for me. Just don't leave me behind, said Nubis. He and Jian Shen had forged their brotherhood through adversity, making their bond anything but ordinary. As a result, Nubis spoke to Jian Shen extremely casually, unlike the other Saint Emperors. All right. I can only take you with me since you insist so much. Jian Shen could only agree to Nubis coming along. Although Nubis was a little weak to go to the saint's world right now, his rate of improvement would definitely be far greater there than if he remained in this world. Afterwards, Jian Shen visited a few old friends, bidding his final farewells. He believed that it would be at least a dozen millennia or even several dozen millennia before he would return. Saint Emperors only had a lifespan of 10 millennia, so his old friends probably would have passed away already when he returned again. Although the origin energy of the world was gradually recovering and there was now the world of Forsaken Saints, a paradise for cultivation, reaching the origin realm was still not an easy accomplishment. Jian Shen then went to find Hao Wu in a remote mountain range. Hao Wu had already become a Saint Emperor now, but he had become an old man instead. He had left Zar Kaiyun and secluded himself in the mountains, cultivating in solitary. Jian Shen's emotions became extremely mixed when he saw the wrinkly, gray-haired old man because this was his father-in-law. After explaining that he was about to leave this world, Hao Wu fell silent. He only responded with a soft sigh after quite a while. Jian Shen, I hope you can look after Mu'er well in the saint's world. I will. Jian Shen swore an oath to himself and Hao Wu. Jian Shen left after his conversation with Hao Wu. Soon, he arrived 1,000 kilometers away from where Hao Wu cultivated. There was a mountain that directly plunged into the clouds there, and there was also a small, wooden hut on it. A beauty in a violet dress sat before the wooden hut, gazing into the distance in a daze. Her face was filled with uncontainable sorrow and memories. She was the ancestor of the Tsar family from the city of God, Tsar Kaiyun. She had left the clan many years ago, no longer interfering with any matters in the clan. She had always remained on the mountain, living a life of seclusion. Aside from cultivation, she liked to do this the most, gazing into the distance in a trance. The direction she gazed in was where Hao Wu had settled down. 1,000 kilometers was originally nothing more than a step for Tsar Kaiyun, a Saint Emperor, but it felt like the ends of the earth in her heart. Jian Shen hovered in the air and gazed at Tsar Kaiyun. His feelings were mixed, and he left after heaving a soft sigh. Tsar Kaiyun had failed to sense Jian Shen's arrival at all. In the end, Jian Shen visited Tianjian. Tianjian had originally become a Saint Emperor through the Saint's world. Jian Shen then gifted him a violet cloud peach, allowing his strength to increase drastically once again. He was now an 8th heavenly layer Saint Emperor, making him one of the most powerful people below the origin realm. Jian Shen had a long conversation with Tianjian. Then he pulled out a white fur from his space ring and forcefully shoved it into Tianjian's hands. This was the fur of the winged tiger god, which covered the way of slaughter from Mo Tianyun. The origin realm experts of this world had tried to comprehend it many times, but they failed to get anything out of it in the end. After a few cycles, it returned to Jian Shen's hands. Right now, Jian Shen had given the beast fur to Tianjian solemnly. Mo Tianyun had left behind the way of slaughter, and Mo Tianyun founded Mercenary City. As the great elder of Mercenary City, it was only right for Tianjian to inherit the beast fur. Whether he could actually comprehend the way of slaughter would be a whole different matter. Jian Shen had considered giving the beast fur to Shengguan Aojin, but he possessed the innate chaotic body. He had his own path to take, so giving the beast fur to Tianjian would be a better choice. After bidding farewell to Tianjian, Jianchen visited the supreme divine hall left behind by Mo Tianyun. He took away Kaya, who remained unconscious in the crystal coffin with him, as well as the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast who had always been watching over her silently. Jianchen was currently helpless about Kaya's situation. As a result, he planned on taking her to the saint's world with him. He hoped to find a way to awaken her there. Afterwards, Jianchen went to the world of forsaken saints again. He found the four brothers who were cultivating there and asked them if they wanted to go to the saint's world with him. Jianchen, we don't want to go to the saint's world yet. We want to cultivate for some time in the world of forsaken saints and go once we're stronger, said Ada. Jianchen nodded and said nothing more. He turned around and left. 3 days later, all the Origin Realm experts in the two worlds arrived on the Tian Yuan continent because this day was Jianchen and the Spirit King's day of departure. Everyone had come to see them off. Aside from the Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent, there were many saint emperors and people who were familiar with Jianchen. This included Tianjian and the few remaining elders of Mercenary City, Tianmu Ling from the Tianmu clan, as well as the two elders of Tianmu Ling who were frequently by her side, Huang Tianba of the Huang family, Qin Shao of the Tianqin clan, Qin Ji of the Qinhuang kingdom and their imperial protectors, Quan Yukai and Kara Liwei of the Radiant Saint Master Union, the Turtle clan experts, Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall, Xia Wang, and so on. In general, basically everyone who was familiar with Jianchen that was still in the living world was present. Even the four brothers who were cultivating in the world of forsaken saints had come specially to see them off. Changyang, who had left the Pure Heart Pavilion for the first time since he returned after severing his emotions and his desires to see Jianchen off one last time. However, there was no longer any lingering signs of brotherhood in his eyes. There was only peace and calmness. Jianchen's heart throbbed with Changyang, whose change. His eldest brother was no longer the eldest brother of the past. Xianger, you have to return alive. You cannot forget that your father and I are still waiting for you here, Bai Yuntian and Changyang Ba said to Jianchen tearfully, unwilling to part with him. The two of them understood that his departure this time would be permanent for them. Brother, I will always wait for you here. Don't forget that you have me, your sister. If you don't return within 10,000 years, you'll probably never see me again. Bai Lian's tears poured down her cheeks as well as she said this to Jianchen while choking back her sobs. With her talent, reaching Saint Emperor was no problem, but the Origin Realm would be almost impossible for her. Father, mother, you have to be careful in the Saint's world. If you don't come back in the next 10,000 years, I'll go to the Saint's world personally to find you, Shengguan Aojian said with great determination. He was not just making conversation about going up to the higher world after 10,000 years. If it were not for the fact that he was worried he might not find his parents in the Saint's world, he had no need to wait 10 millennia to go up. Jianchen, you have to return. Yu and Huang Wan were in tears. The two of them were in horrible spirits. Jianchen's departure this time seemed eternal to them. At this moment, the bright moon divine hall flew over from afar, gently landing on the ground. Soon afterwards, its doors swung open, and Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out, "You four who haven't reached the Origin Realm, it's impossible for you to survive in the space of the tunnel. Come in here." With that, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, Hei Yu, and Nubis all entered the bright moon divine hall. It won't be smooth sailing traveling through the spatial tunnel. If we're unlucky, we'll come across some danger. I advise everyone to enter my bright moon divine hall aside from Jianchen and the Spirit King, just in case of any accidents, Fairy Hao Yu continued. Xiao Zhong immediately became displeased when he heard that. He said, "Your divine hall doesn't seem sturdy at all. With my strength at reciprocity, how is it possible for me to be safer if I stay in your divine hall? Let alone your puny strength at reciprocity, even if Jianchen moves through the spatial tunnel with his current strength, it won't be as safe as remaining in my divine hall." It's just that I have to pay too great of a price if I want to return to the saints' world by myself, which is why I have to go with you, Fairy Hao Yu said coldly. Everyone could tell that reciprocity was nothing in her eyes. Xiongzhong did not dare to say anything more. Instead, he glanced at Jian Chen. He would have definitely believed that Fairy Hao Yu was telling tales if she did not use Jian Chen as a point of comparison. He would have never complied with his personality. However, now that Fairy Hao Yu had mentioned that even Jian Chen would be safer by remaining in her divine hall, she clearly held no regard for Jian Chen at all. He wanted to see Jian Chen's reaction. Jian Chen rubbed his nose and smiled resplendently. Fairy Hao Yu is the reincarnation of a great expert in the saints' world. Since it's her who said it, there are definitely reasons why it's true. It's best if you all enter the divine hall. Jian Chen had never been sure about the ins and outs of Fairy Hao Yu. Even with his current strength, Fairy Hao Yu still seemed unfathomable in his eyes. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.